Good morning. It's time for coffee and cursey words for Thursday, April 13th. It's not even like a Friday the 13th. It's a take two. Something's probably in retrograde. I don't know what's happening, but we had some tech glitches. Most of you were there to experience, and if you weren't, we started a second stream so that you didn't have to sit through the downtime when I got yeeted off of my own stream due to power. Power is all back. Microphone is all back. I am all back. We are back. We have lots to talk about today. So, in our take two, I talked about the Sandavol briefly. I'm going to touch on that really quickly. We are going to be talking about the Mötley Crüe lawsuit and BBTV and Ethan Klein and why I think BBTV backed down. But there's a lot to know about these contracts. And I always think it's helpful when we look at contracts. We have looked at them in the bridal industry, the music industry. And so today we're just looking at a bunch of different kinds of contracts. And we were just talking about Bravo and reality TV contracts. I would love to see more reality TV contracts. If anybody wants to send me them, they are like, we don't want to send you them because we don't want to get in trouble for sending them. Because they all have confidentiality clauses in them, as does the BBTV one that we're going to talk about anyway. So with all of that, let us continue and start a brand new stream. Let me know where you're coming in from, what you're drinking. Flux, did you try blowing on it? That's what fixed it. That's absolutely what fixed it. And you know, I learned the old ways of my people from the Nintendo cartridge. You had to just blow on it just right to put it back into the game system. So I am just referring back to the ancient ways. I turned it off and then on, and then I blew on it. So cheers to the old ways. And Coco, this is a great question. As H3 versus BBTV isn't happening anymore, what do we hope to accomplish with today's reading? These contracts exist across different kinds of industries where you are signing a contract and you are contracting for things that might not exist yet. And that is A, very helpful, and B, I think evaluating why a company might back down so quickly is super helpful to all of you that are creators, et cetera, et cetera. So with all of that, let us just start over. Look, when do we get a do-over in the morning? Not often, but today. Today we have a wee do-over, and I'm here for it. Law Nerds, you're the best. Thank you all for riding back in on this stream. I'm sure YouTube didn't notify all of you because not all of you are back, but I'm sure some of you will find your way back to the stream. And if you have anyone you want to watch it with, share it with them because now they need the new link.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not... Let's get into it.
So as we were talking about the Sandavol, the part that we were talking about was the contracts that Bravo have with their talent. And the reason you normally wouldn't see talent in an active TV show giving an interview outside of the Bravo approved family of interviews until the reunion drops. The reunions are like they're the big finale of any season of TV, and it's where everybody hashes out all the tea. So if they go on a bunch of podcasts and hash it out in real time before the reunion drops, you can see where it could take away from the interest. I think that's the opposite of what will happen here. I think this will boost the interest and intrigue into the Vanderpump Rules reunion. Look, man, I'm in like season 8 of this show that I had not watched before the Sandavol started like a month and a half ago. So that tells you what I've been doing when I'm not talking about like Gwyneth Paltrow. So I am now sucked. I am now invested. And my sister-in-law is like, oh, thank God. You have to watch this show. So I am now invested. Deeply, deeply invested into the lives of those on Vanderpump Rules. So it, I think, has boosted the franchise. We've seen ratings boost in the franchise. But with that, they get fined if they do unapproved media. So I think Sandavol will probably be facing some hefty fines that will come out of whatever he earned this season for doing that Howie Mandel interview. So if you're curious in it, go watch it before it comes down off the internet. I don't know if it will or won't. I've not really seen Bravo take down interviews like that, but you never know because the shit's kind of already out of the horse, right? And I wonder if Bravo's like, hey, we're going to fine you for doing it. You're not allowed to do it, but it's also trending in like the top 20 of podcasts. And it's also bringing more information or more attention or more publicity to the fact that there's now going to be a reunion. Because then you've got Howie Mandel going on Extra talking to Billy Bush about what Lala said in her Instagram stories. And I'm like, how deep down the rabbit hole is everybody? And so Howie Mandel's like everyone is now talking about it. And so I don't think they'll take it down because for Bravo, everyone talking is good, but they still can't let you can't let Sandoval go give unauthorized interviews and not fine him because you're going to fine others that are giving unauthorized interviews. And then it becomes an issue of equity. And why are you fining some and not fining others? Oh, thank you guys. So this is a shirt. I think it's from Torrid, but I absolutely love it. I don't remember how. No, I think my stylist is how it came to me. I needed a bunch of clothes for all of the travel I did last year. So I did the one thing that I had been wanting to do forever. I asked a stylist. I was like, "Can you help me dress for all of these events?" And she was like, "Girl, I got you." And so brought me a bunch of clothes and was like, "This is what we're doing." So I think this is Torrid. But when I saw Ethan Klein's thumbnail for his conversation about getting paid back from BBTV, he has a rainbow spewing out of his mouth. And I was like, I can be on theme. I can be on theme. I'm feeling very rainbowy, so I can be on theme. So I'm theme dressing because it looks like the thumbnail. And that's the first thing I thought of. I was like, I have a shirt with rainbow tongues. Yes, it has a Rolling Stones vibe to it. I love this shirt. So with all of that, Dana said they don't find them for Page Six interviews. They constantly do, or Us Magazine. There are approved interviews, but they're normally not on the active show pre-reunion. And when they do give interviews, those are run through Bravo. So they will give interviews on things, but they are Bravo approved interviews with Bravo approved journalists. It's not so fluid. It's a very controlled circumstance. And when somebody goes off into doing their own thing, it becomes a little bit of an issue. So, that is really funny. So Della, no, my stylist was bringing me things for TV and things for casual. So that is what I absolutely wanted. So I needed a bunch of different things. So not all things for TV. This was on my things for stream, things for casual, and I freaking love it. So I'm very happy. I think the point of having somebody work with you, or for me, the point of having somebody work with me is things that I can wear in my everyday life versus things I can wear when I am doing on stage or television things. So with all of that, we need to get into the different contract situations. At the end of the day, we had the poll up and Mötley Crüe was winning till right at the end. And right at the end, the foot soldiers in the chat were just like, no, we're going to talk about H3 first. So we're going to talk about H3 first. Seamoth, yes, I love those vibes about it too. So let us all just. And Nikki said also the professionalism of the morning. I mean, a girl's just trying to stream and the power grid's got to be like, good luck, bitch. It's so annoying. So we're going to talk about that first, and then we'll talk about the Mötley Crüe lawsuit, which is very, very interesting to me. With all of that, let us dive in to the Ethan Klein BBTV is it a kerfuffle? Are we officially at a kerfuffle? Are we at a standoff? I think the standoff is over, but I think kerfuffle is the appropriate word. So Ethan Klein, BBTV, kerfuffle. For quick way of background, if you don't follow H3 or BBTV or know who any of these parties are, don't worry, I've got you. The H3 podcast is a very large podcast on YouTube. I think he's also on podcasting apps, run by Ethan Klein, who is the host, and his team. They have massive live streams and a huge fan base. They were working with BBTV, which is an MCN, a multi-channel network. I saw a great podcast on the Simply Podlogical where Ben and Christine broke this down really well, talked about the early days of YouTube when they were coming up, the need of MCNs at that time, and how much YouTube has progressed to get to the point where creators um, can do this on their own without having to have a multi-channel network. So if you're interested in more behind the scenes, the Simply Podlogical breakdown of this I thought was absolutely great. I know Phil DeFranco broke it down. I know Canadian lawyer Ian Runkle at Runkle of the Bailey broke it down. And I think Moist Critical commented on it, and I'm sure that more did. So Simply Podlogical had a great behind the scenes if you really want the like creator inside baseball tea. And I talked about this a lot on yesterday's Members Only Live. So with all of that in the early days of YouTube, it was harder to get paid from YouTube than it is now. So signing with a multi-channel network could allow you more access to YouTube. This was before YouTube had a partner managed program where you could have like direct conversations with YouTube. YouTube in Creator Studio now has like a help chat where you can reach out to YouTube. That didn't used to exist. You didn't used to be able to get paid for ads on YouTube without really being part of an MCN. So back in 2016, 2017, a lot of creators signed with them, and getting out of these contracts is very, very difficult. So for some creators and bigger creators like Moist Critical, who said he was with BBTV, and with Ethan Klein, it's like, well, if they're only taking a percentage of the ads that they bring to my channel, what's it matter? The way YouTube pays out right now is okay, George. The way YouTube pays out right now is that you get your in the back of YouTube Studio, you can see the difference between ad revenue, YouTube premium revenue, and fan funding revenue, which is like super chats and memberships. I don't remember. Let me just go look real quick. I don't remember if fan funding and super chats are broken out further than that in the categories. I think if you dive into your analytics, you can find it. But when you just go and look at your overview of revenue, it breaks it down in those categories. So let me see. Fan funding, watch page ads, shorts feed ads, YouTube premium. So that's how it breaks it down. Fan funding you can break down further, and that includes memberships, super thanks, super chats, that kind of stuff. But when it all gets lumped and paid to YouTube, it's in that one big number, and you really have to dive into your analytics to break it down into how much is from super chats, how much is from memberships, how much is from super stickers, super thanks, and things like that. So when it gets paid from YouTube, it's in those categories, but then YouTube pays you in one lump sum, and YouTube takes their 30% out of it. So if you pay for a membership on the channel, if an ad goes on the channel, if a super chat goes on the channel, YouTube takes a 30% cut off the top of all of it. I have been asking YouTube to take less than that. We'll see if they will. But also, you also have the, if you do it through an Apple device, Apple takes a percentage. If you do it through a Google device, Google takes a percentage. If you do it on desktop, they don't, blah, 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 blah. So a lot of things come out of it before it goes anywhere. What a creator earns for like January gets paid out towards the end of February. And BBTV in March said that they are going to be paying out not in February for January, not in March, but in April, which is weird to me. And that's also going to make it hard for creators to leave if they are still waiting if you're in April waiting for payment from YouTube for January, February, and March, it kind of puts you a bit behind, and that can make it really difficult to switch over and wait for payment. So I understand the pickle that creators get into, but a multi-channel network like BBTV takes over your AdSense. So instead of the money getting sent to the creator's bank account or hopefully business bank account, it gets sent to BBTV. And then they have to take that money and parse it back out. Hopefully they're not putting it all in one giant lump sum and then trying to figure out which money goes to which creator. They probably are, but that can end up in an issue, right? If your accounting is not really clear. So they're paying out, they used to pay out like a month behind. So YouTube would pay BBTV like in February for January, but then BBTV wouldn't pay the creator for another 30 days in March. And now it looks like they're doing a net 60 for payment, which really wouldn't work with me. If somebody's like, oh, by the way, we're going to now switch you to a net 60. It's like, yeah, but I pay out my bills not on a net 60. So could you not switch when you're paying me? So they take all of your AdSense. When BBTV and I had conversations, what I was not interested in is giving anyone control of my AdSense. If they wanted to bring sponsorships onto the channel, and I do have sponsorships much more heavily on the podcast, which is really the way podcasting works and supports itself. I'm very happy to have sponsorships on the podcast. Those come to me through a that was frustrating. Those come to me through a brand management company, and then they take a percentage of those. Today's just going to be an issue, y'all. Today's going to be special. So they take a percentage of just that, not of everything I make. So when Ethan Klein switched, and this actually made me feel really, really bad for Ethan looking at it. When Ethan switched accountants is when he found this. So when you find, excuse me, when you find that an accountant hasn't been catching this kind of stuff, it's like a sinking feeling because then you need a new accountant to go back and check everything. So this is not uncommon for large creators to have an accountant to handle this kind of shit. So needed the accountant to handle it, then wasn't catching the difference. That is George back there on the chair. And so when Ethan saw it, he was like, holy shit, they're taking 30% of membership revenue, which I imagine on their channel is substantial because he said that the net loss of that 30%, because they take that 30%, was over $600,000. So when you're now out $600,000, that's a big conversation of like, hey, why are you taking 30% of my revenue from Google? So the fight was what the contract said in a contract that was signed before channel memberships and super chats existed. Can contracts contract for things before they exist? Yes. Yes, they can. So a lot of contracts, when you look at like the music industry, there were a lot of fights in the music industry when streaming was growing. And we saw artists kind of putting their foot down over where streaming fell and who was taking revenues on streaming, how much revenue cut was getting on streaming, whether these large music distributors could negotiate those rates, whether each band needed to negotiate those rates, because the bands had their catalogs sometimes decades before streaming was even contemplated. It was just you go buy a record or you go to or you buy a CD or you buy a tape or you whatever, and you go to a concert. That was it. Now there's so much more. So with all of that, CC in the chat had a great question. Do they take their 30% before or after YouTube takes their 30? YouTube gets their 30 before the money ever gets to the creator. So YouTube takes its portion before that money ever hits a creator bank account. So that would be the same for BBTV. The YouTube 30% comes off the top and you get paid what's left. And then BBTV takes their 30 of that remaining, what's 30 of 100? Look, y'all, math is not my strong suit, and that's an easy one. 70? That's embarrassing. So then truly, when you look at the 100%, YouTube's taking 30 and then BBTV is taking 30% of the 70 that's remaining. And then Ethan Klein's getting the rest of it. No, but they take that 5%. Exactly. Seeing all of the foot soldiers in here. So I know public mathing is embarrassing. So 30% of the 70 remaining. So with all of this, Ethan went through the contract and was like, it seems like it's obvious. And here's what I want to say to everyone out there that is a creator Today's going to be a struggle, y'all. I'm going to try to get through this show as fast as I can. So, for everyone who's been a creator, there is a lot of importance that we need to go through this contract for, because this can happen and it's not as clear cut as everyone would like it to be. If I'm H3 and their team, I want this to be clear cut. If I'm BBTV and their lawyers, I want this to be clear cut. Unfortunately, when it comes to contracts that are contemplating things that don't exist yet, it's an argument, and lawyers on both sides are going to argue it. I think Ethan Klein has the stronger argument here than BBTV does. But here's the problem for creators that can't afford to fight, is this could go down to a court fight. I think Ethan Klein is a large enough creator that when he goes on Twitter and is like, my MCN is stealing 30% from me, that the MCN has to have a very real conversation about whether that is going to cause all of the creators with them to ask for their money and leave. So a smaller creator maybe wouldn't have that same leverage, but Ethan does. And what I have seen from Ethan whenever he gets into these fights is that he is fighting issues that are impacting other creators as well. Even before he was a large creator, he took the fight on what is transformative use, what is fair use, at a time when he probably couldn't easily afford to do so, with the Matt Hawks case, and got a ruling in that case that was very, very favorable to creators and really laid out the steps. And I've got a video on the channel breaking down how the court parsed out fair use in that case. When he is fighting over defamation and being sued for defamation and parody and comedy, that is an expensive fight to take, instead of just taking the video down and saying, yeah, Ryan Kavanaugh or Harvey Weinstein or whoever, leave me the fuck alone. I'll just take it down and not say anything again. Ethan's like, oh, fuck me? No, fuck you. But the fights that he's fighting are fights that impact not just the platform, but all creators. And so that's one of the reasons that we're talking about it, because these fights do impact smaller creators who don't have the money to undertake this kind of fight, because fighting with BBTV could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when Ethan says, I will mount up and ride for that money, I will spend more than you owe me to fucking win, I absolutely believe him. Absolutely believe that he's like, I will ride. I'm right. You're wrong. And so with all of it, we're going to go through this and look at it. And I know, and I've seen some of you in the chat, not everyone loves Ethan Klein. I understand that. Not everyone on this platform loves every creator. I understand that too. But I'm always going to talk about lawsuits where there is somebody that people in the chat don't love everything they've ever done, everything they've ever said. And I don't know at what point I'll stop clarifying that, but we talk about people accused of all kinds of things on this channel, and we talk about their legal rights. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about their legal rights. So for those of you that don't love, we're going to treat it the same way we treat everyone else. This chat has been able to be civil to James Spears. I think that's probably the hardest thing to do. So I appreciate that we get to talk about the legal fight, and because two things can be true at once. And we saw this with the Gwyneth Paltrow case, and we see this with Meghan Markle as well. There are people who have very strong feelings, because most of the people we talk about are polarizing in some way or another. People have very strong feelings, but someone you have very strong feelings about, whether positive or negative, can still be in the right or still be in the wrong legally in another case. So let us continue on. Yeah, the chat, exactly, Jessica Hicks. The chat was civil to Daryl Brooks. It's a very difficult thing to do. Very difficult. So with all of that, let us continue. The chat is a great place to be civil and talk about the law. And when there is a fight to be had on behalf of creators, Ethan does stand up and fight on behalf of creators every single time. So with this contract, I'm going to show you what Ethan sent to me, and then I'm going to show you what BBTV sent to me. And we're going to take a little look-see-poo at the two different contracts. Now, I am going to show you the front page of Ethan's contract and then move on. I redacted it, but then the copy ended up not being as great. So once I get past the first page, I'm going to switch real quick. So if my tech doesn't just decide to give up, because what is today even? All right, let's see what we can do. I wanted to redact some stuff out of here because it had some identifying information that I wanted to just make sure didn't get out on the internet. Oh, Emily. Why isn't your screen sharing turned on? I don't know. I don't know. That's not helpful. Yes, Ethan is definitely fighting on principle. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. I love the people that are like, I don't know who Ethan is. Look, here's what it is. He's a large creator on the platform who does get into these kind of fights and will not back down from it. So you can watch all of his content on this. He's talked about this at length. He's released a phone call that he had with BBTV, and they didn't back down from it. I was a little surprised to hear Ethan on his phone call with BBTV being like, you know what? Fine. Fuck you. Fuck your company. Fuck all of this. And I was like, oh. For those of you on the members only live stream yesterday, you know how well I deal with conflict. It would have taken me 3 or 4 phone calls to get to the I'm going to have my lawyers talk to you about this. I love that Ethan was just there in the first phone call. He's like, it's $600,000. Go ahead and fuck you. So this is the beginning of the content provider agreement from Ethan Klein. The content provider agreement is entered between 2 Broadband TV Corp. located in Vancouver, Canada. I love Vancouver. And the undersigned, who is Ethan. The agreement incorporates the definitions attached hereto as Exhibit A and the general terms and conditions attached hereto as Exhibit B. Always look at your definitions. Always. Always. Always look at your definitions. It's one of the most important parts. And your choice of law provisions. Very, very important stuff. As well as the contents of the cover sheet and any other exhibits referred to in the cover sheet. So this is the cover sheet, your name, their name, like Ethan's business name, the rest of it, your videos, and they talk about what they mean by videos, except for a video titled Maddie B. Juicy that was excluded from all of this. I imagine it was a video doing well. Your channels, and then it links the channels, and it links them specifically to the 3 different channels that they're contemplating, which is like the H3 channel, their main channel, and another channel. Your content, they defined your content, means your channels and your videos, and includes the following content within or related to your channels and your videos: graphics, music, sounds, images, files, photos, animation, artwork, text, data, information, messages, hypertext, links, scripts, and other materials, and all metadata for greater certainty. Your content includes your ID, but only to the extent your ID is contained in your videos. I think they mean content ID. Initial term, 1 month from effective date. So this then becomes like a month-to-month contract, which makes it a little easier for them to leave if they need to. Territory worldwide. BBTV services, and this is what BBTV says they're going to do for Ethan and his YouTube channel. Grant you access to BBTV's proprietary dashboard, which provides certain revenue reporting, performance analytics, and others. So it's like an analytics portal. Grant you access to any content libraries that BBTV makes available. So they generally will have things that are royalty free or that they paid the royalties for that their creators can use. Consider your content for the sale of direct ads, which means BBTV will sell ads and place them on your videos. For the sale of branded entertainment opportunities, brand deals, sponsorships, other platform opportunities, consider your videos for distribution on one or more BBTV channels. In all cases, BBTV would notify you in advance. So this wouldn't happen without being notified. Provide in BBTV's sole discretion other value-added benefits or services that may be typically offered to content providers such as you. So, they can come to you and give you other stuff. Google net revenue. This becomes a very large part of this contract. BBTV will pay you an amount equal to 100% of Google net revenue received by BBTV from your videos on your YouTube channels. So then the question in your mind should be, okay, but what counts as Google net revenue? And that's really where the fight in this contract is. What is defined as Google net revenue? And we'll get to the definitions because lawyers will split hairs over definitions. And you have seen this in trial after trial after trial that we cover. Direct ad net revenue, if any direct ads, which means BBTV is selling ads and putting them on your content. If any direct ads are sold in addition to Google ads, BBTV will pay you an amount equal to 75% of direct ad net revenue received by BBTV. So if BBTV does the work, they're taking a cut. Most creators are fine with that. If you go out and sell it for my channel, you take a percentage, I take a percentage. This percentage is a bit high. Most of those are in the 10-20 range at this point, from my understanding. Branded entertainment revenue. BBTV will pay you an amount of the following: 70% of all branded entertainment net revenue, 75% of all branded entertainment net revenue by BBTV from branded entertainment agreements secured by you, but administered or managed by BBTV. Additional revenue, see Section 5, which we're going to need to get to. There's no argument that memberships are not branded entertainment revenue, right? So the argument is between additional revenue and Google net revenue. So remember when I told you earlier, when Google pays a creator, they pay you a lump sum every month, and that lump sum includes ads, fan funding, and then like YouTube Premium. That's what's included in a lump sum. Fan funding includes memberships, super chats, super thanks, super stickers, all the rest of it. So Section 5A is the Section 5A of Exhibit B is the general terms, and then there was a $10,000 signing bonus. Signature terms, we're not going to get through the signature terms much. Ethan Klein signed this September 28th, 2017. What we're going to look for are what? The definitions. These are the most important part of almost any contract. You need to know the terms, and you need to know how those terms are defined. So let's go to Google net revenue. Oh, we've got the direct ad net revenue. Any ads sold with the consent or authorization of BBTV other than Google ads. So that makes it very clear, not Google ads. Google means Google Inc. and any of its affiliates, including YouTube or their successors. Google ad means an ad sold by Google with respect to your videos. Google fee means any amount charged by Google in the case of YouTube or any other case any other platform charged by owner or operator thereof. Google net revenue. Here, let me zoom that out a little so we can all see it together. Google net revenue. For any period, which is pay period, for any period means the revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in such period from Google ads and Google subscriptions with respect to your content on YouTube, less the following amounts charged, levied, paid, or payable in relation to such revenue. A, taxes other than net income taxes or other government levies, which kind of sucks because if they're taking 30% of your Google net revenue, if they're BBTV, here's the problem. You are going to be taxed, and you're going to have to consider taxes that aren't taken out yet. So when you get that lump sum from Google, you're earning that income, that whole amount of income. Taxes aren't coming out of it yet. So do you then have to, this would be my contention, do I then have to go to BBTV and say, excuse me, I'm going to have to pay X, Y, and Z in taxes. Can you please give me back that income so I can save it for taxes later? Because this is supposed to carve out taxes. But if they're just taking an amount off the top, well, then they're taking an amount off the top that you still might be on the hook for tax-wise because it's part of your net revenue. So then you're going to have to deal with what they took as gross. And that is a very interesting consideration as well. Because YouTube does not withhold taxes in the US. I don't know if they do that elsewhere in the world, but they do not in the US. What YouTube takes is only their percentage and you get the rest of it. And then you have to account for your own taxes. You have to account for your own taxes, creators. Put that money aside or you will get hosed real fast. Not legal advice, practical advice. So Google net revenue. Less the following amounts charged, levied, paid, or payable. I would argue taxes are payable and you shouldn't be taking any of it. A, taxes or other net income taxes and other government levies. B, the Google fee, if any. and see the rights fees, if any. What is a Google subscription? A subscription based service on YouTube offered or facilitated by YouTube, whereby end users may access your videos, the timing and selection of which is at the end user's discretion, and for which the end user is charged a predetermined periodic fee to access such content as often as the end user selects during the period covered by the fee. For avoidance of doubt, Google subscription includes the Google branded service YouTube Red and any successors or replacements thereof, which would now be YouTube Premium. I think there is a very, very strong argument that a membership is a Google subscription. And I think BBTV would be on the back foot trying to argue that a membership is not a subscription, because it does not say that it is only Google Red, and it does not say that it is only or YouTube Red or YouTube Premium. It says includes. And so if I'm the lawyer, I'm arguing that the Google subscription does include YouTube Red and YouTube Premium, but it also includes memberships. So I think that's a big part of why BBTV backed down, because this Google subscription basically defines what a membership is. A membership is a predetermined periodic fee to access content. It even though memberships did not exist, you can contract contemplating the future. You just have to find where the future fits. I think the strongest argument on this is a membership is a subscription. And so it is not part of Google net revenue. It is part of a Google subscription, which therefore, by the definition in this contract, makes it part of Google net revenue because they've carved it out. That would be my argument. And I would put my foot down and fight on that it's a subscription. So when they talk about other net revenue, that is where they were trying to put it. What BBTV wants this to be other net revenue. And so when it comes down to sometimes millions of dollars, contracts can come down to a court interpreting where a comma went to mean including something or excluding something. When it comes to contract writing, this is why you need lawyers, because you need lawyers who have done enough of this to be able to say, this is how a court is going to interpret this. This is how they've interpreted this in the past. It is never just as cut and dry as, well, obviously that defines it, because how a court might read it and how everyone else might read it could be very different. So I think it falls under Google subscriptions. They wanted it to fall under other net revenue. This is what they were arguing with Ethan about. Other net revenue for any period means the revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in any such period from distribution, monetization, or exploitation of your content in a manner other than through the sale of Google ads, Google subscriptions, direct ads, or other platform ads. So this is trying to contemplate the future. How else could content be monetized? Could you license it? Could you do something like that? Could you sell an NFT of your content? This is contemplating things going forward in the future. But this clause very clearly says other than Google subscriptions. So if you are Ethan Klein's lawyers, you're like, memberships are subscriptions, other net revenue carves out subscriptions, we're done here. And BBTV is like, no, subscriptions only meant YouTube Premium, YouTube Red. However, that's not what it says. It says includes. It does not say is only. So I think there's an argument here that Google, again, the memberships are subscriptions and then other net revenue is not a problem. But this is how contracts try to contemplate the future, which is very difficult as a creator, as a musician, as a wedding dress designer, or whoever, to see the future and go, what are the other ways this content could be monetized or sold? Because at this point, super chats weren't really contemplated. Now, do super chats count as other net revenue? Or are super chats also subscriptions? Or are super chats part of Google net revenue because they're being paid directly in with your ads? Or does Google net revenue only mean ads? Like, where do super chats fall on this? Because super chats aren't a Google ad. They're not a subscription. They're not a direct ad. They're not a platform ad. They're not a branded content arrangement. So they're saying other net revenue includes revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in connection with your content from with respect to other platforms, subscription fees, and from with respect to any platform, including YouTube, rentals, in-app purchases. Is a super chat an in-app purchase? I think it's an interesting argument. So including rentals, in-app purchases, download to own methods of monetization, and the monetization of claimed content, less the following amounts are charged, levied, taxes, and it goes through the other things that we saw above. So then you have to start to parse, okay, well, is a subscription different than a super chat? And is it an in-app purchase or is it something else? And this is where these fights happen. I don't think that BBTV is going to fight this with Ethan Klein, but I think this is something that other creators need to be really mindful of if they are with an MCN. It's time to check your contract. And it's time to know if you are working with an MCN and it is benefiting you, just know what they are taking. It is time to check your contract. And every time that there is an update to the platform, you have to go back and look at the contract and say, you know what? I want to either modify this contract or be released from this contract. Because Apple and Google treat super chats and super stickers as in-app purchases because they take a percentage of them. I don't know if they do that with memberships. I would suspect that they do. I need clarification on that. I'm curious. I suspect that they do, but they treat it as an in-app purchase. And so now if there's an argument between whether or not a membership is an in-app purchase or not an in-app purchase, then you have another argument that you're doing all of this in court and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. So I think the fact that Ethan Klein is such a large creator is part of why BBTV backed down in this. I worry for the creators that don't have the leverage of an audience size and the ability to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight would end up being like, they're telling me it's other net revenue and now I'm screwed. And whether BBTV would fight others on, well, other net revenue includes super chats because it's an in-app purchase. Because these contracts in 2017 were signed before those things existed. And now you have to find the language in the contract to fit the thing. So that's where these fights come in because it's not always so clear. And a super chat doesn't fall under a subscription. I think it falls or could fall, and we'll see what the rest of the contract says, in an in-app purchase, right? So with that, they then define other platform ad net revenue. So I believe that you would argue, like if you put your YouTube videos up on Facebook, Twitch, TikTok, whatever, there's an argument that any other platform net ad revenue for any period means the revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in any such period from other platform ads less the following. I don't know how they would do that because those aren't running through Google. And then they go with platform, what a platform means: technology, service, product, tool, interface, vehicle, or system, whether known or hereinafter created or devised. Future. On which one or more channels or video content are hosted, powered, operated, managed, accessed, displayed, distributed, or viewed. For greater clarity, platform includes websites such as YouTube and Facebook and other third-party websites that are not owned or controlled by you. Software applications such as mobile applications. Like if a creator wanted to start an app to distribute their videos, then would BBTV want to take a cut? So as you do things as a creator, if you have a contract like this, you have to seek clarity when the platform makes updates. And that's really hard because it feels like, well, the company should be the one seeking clarity. But that's not what they're going to do. So it's really difficult because when you're busy creating, you're like, I don't want to be proactive on this. Like, shouldn't they just do the right thing? They should. Doesn't mean they're going to. Linda, this is why we're going over it, even though it's kind of resolved. because I'm sure there are other creators that are still with MCNs with similar contracts who need to start having these conversations. I spoke at University of Memphis on Tuesday, and we were talking about kind of future casting social media. What does it look like if something in Section 230 changes? What does it look like with deepfakes? What does it look like with AI generated voices and deepfakes? What are the copyrights if an AI can deepfake Britney Spears' voice and have her sing new music and release it? Like, who owns the rights to this? Somebody's making money off of it, right? Who's making money off of it? Where does that money go? Are they allowed to? And these are the contemplations that lawyers go through. This is what you pay lawyers to think about. But these are, when you have to take older contracts and move them forward, these are the contemplations. Oh, did you guys watch the Emily show? My podcast, we're trying to break the charts in TV and film. Did you guys watch or listen to the Emily show when we went over the contract with regard to South Park? We talked about this there too. They took the old contract and made an addendum to it, but then we're trying to figure out streams and restreams and distribution and where initial release was going to be and which streaming platform it was going to be on after, the original contract, which was just like, this shit goes on Comedy Central and that's all that exists. Because the direct streaming platforms, when the contract was written, didn't exist. Oh my God, Deli, I talked about holographic Tupac. I talked about that on Tuesday. I like when creators use the Streamlabs tips super chat option so they're getting a higher percentage of money, but people still pay via YouTube because Google Pay is often easier to use. And there's a lot of benefits that they break it in. I also, I talked about this in the part 1. I am a creator with StreamYard, love StreamYard, and have used StreamYard since I started doing this kind of content on my channel because they make it so easy to pull up things like super chats. But in the chat, you want to be able to see them. I don't like things popping on my screen. I need it simplified, which is one of the reasons I use StreamYard, so it is simplified, and then I can just go and pull things up. But yes, there's a back and forth. Kathy, my son took the picture of the crew in your bumper. I love that. Dustin Jack Photography. I'll have to go look. That's fantastic. All right. So let's continue talking about this. Katie, I'm gonna star this so I can get to it when I get to questions, because we're gonna do 2 contracts today. Let's see. Interpretation. No provision of this agreement will be construed against either party by virtue of that party having drafted and prepared the agreement. All headings are inserted for reference only, meaning the headings don't have legal effect. The term including is not limiting and means including without limitation. I love this so much. So when you go to including means this and all, like this et infinitum. And so when you do that, and then you go back and look at, God, you guys are like, Emily, are we just going through a full contracts class today? Yes. So when you go back and look at Google subscriptions and the language in Google subscriptions, this is why I do things in multicolors when I read contracts for like legally work, because I would go back and circle again, including, and then I would go and look at the interpretation and say, including means including without limitation. So when you get to subscriptions, and this is also why I still do things on paper quite often. When it says, for the avoidance of doubt, Google subscriptions includes, it means it includes the Google branded services like YouTube Premium without limitation. And again, I think that leans to including memberships. This goes through best efforts, how people are going to behave in the contract. And then it gets to prohibited contract or required and prohibited conduct. There's a privacy clause in here somewhere, which is kind of funny. Let's see. And then revenue. Here's the additional revenue breakdown. In addition to the amounts set out in the cover sheet, which we went about above, and subject to BBTV obtaining your prior written approval to use your content in the manner described below, BBTV will also pay you in accordance with the terms of this agreement. In the event that you provide your prior written approval for BBTV to use your videos on a BBTV channel, 75%. 75% of other ad net revenue received by BBTV, 70% of other net revenue, and other net revenue was decided above. And it says, or as parties may agree in writing. This is not a limitation. This is an opening that if something comes up for other net revenue, that can be negotiated. But here's what's interesting in this when it says additional revenue. In additional revenue, it says, in addition to the amounts set out in the cover sheet and subject to BBTV obtaining your prior written approval to use your content in the manner described below. I don't think this parentheses down here, or as the parties may agree, is a limitation, but I think the additional revenue at the top is a limitation because it seems that BBTV did not go to Ethan, Hila, or anyone else on their team and say, hey, we think memberships are other net revenue. We need to obtain your prior written approval to use your content in the manner described below. They're going to argue, no, it's just other net revenue and other net revenue is described above. But this heading, I think, can be argued to say, in addition to the amounts set forth in the cover sheet doesn't mention other net revenue because it says and I would say that and is a requirement and subject to BBTV obtaining your prior written approval to use your content in the manner described below. Then BBTV will also pay you 70% of other net revenue. So how can you take 70% of other net revenue, arguing that memberships are other net revenue, which I don't agree with, but arguing that they're other net revenue without getting prior written approval? I think this is part of why they backed this down, because there is a lot of room to argue, and all the room to argue at this point for me goes in favor of Ethan Klein. And I don't think BBTV wants to spend the money to fight the court of public opinion when they could lose in the court of law on this very realistically. So, Luna Del Tuna said 5A3 states or as. It does. But that they're allowed to take 70% of other net revenue. Hear me out. And up above it says after written approval is obtained, or they can modify it and agree. That's not an and. So they're allowed to take 70% of other net revenue once they have prior written approval to use the content in that manner. The or as parties may agree upon is a, hey, there's an opening here that we may agree that it's different. Right? So that's part of it. So, and is not or, correct. Or is or, and is and. So with all of that, it also then says payment of your revenue. BBTV will pay your revenue within 60 days following the end of the month in which the applicable net revenue was received by BBTV. That is a net 60 term that would have made me real uncomfortable. So when we see other creators saying they are now on a net 60, that was always in Ethan's contract, meaning when Ethan earns money in January, YouTube pays it out in February to BBTV. And then from the end of February, BBTV has 60 days to pay it. So 60 days to pay it means that you're 90 days out from when you earned it. That's a big problem for me. So that's a big swing. 60 days is not I don't love a net 60. I don't love a net 30. I'm like, well, if you get the money in 15 days, why can't you turn it back around to me? Like, what are you doing? Well, I know what you're doing, but what are you doing? So BBTV will pay your revenue within 60 days following the end of the month in which the applicable net revenue is received by BBTV, provided that your earned balance is $20 or more. We will also provide you a monthly report of your revenue up to the latest date reasonably available. If your earned balance is less than $20 but greater than $1, they will pay your earned balance within approximately 45 days of the end of the calendar year. et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then they go through payment accounts, independent contractor, terms, termination with a 30-day written notice, unauthorized unlinking. This is linking your account to them. You acknowledge and agree that notwithstanding that YouTube may provide you with the ability or functionality to release or otherwise disconnect your channel from BBTV's CMS or remove BBTV's access to your channel via BBTV CMS prior to the expiry of the current term, under no circumstances shall such unauthorized unlinking release you from this agreement or the terms and conditions thereof. So it's like if you unlink your account in addition, then they're going to come for you. Consequences of termination. Upon termination of the agreement, or termination of this agreement pursuant to Section 7A and 7B above, BBTV shall make commercially reasonable and good faith efforts to release and otherwise disconnect or take down your content and claimed content from BBTV CMS and all BBTV channels. So they have to unlink it. They have to give you back your channel revenue. Without limitation, any provision in this agreement upon BBTV's release or disconnection of your content and claimed content, BBTV will not be liable in any way for your content and claimed content thereafter. Neither the inadvertent display of your content or claimed content on any BBTV channels or platforms after the termination, nor the inadvertent failure to release. And that, then it goes through retention of IP, who owns the rights. Always important if you are a content creator to look at. The disclaimer, the indemnity, limitation of liability, confidentiality. The parties will not disclose the terms of this agreement. Ethan disclosed them. That's a whole separate issue. Privacy, venue, choice of law. This you always have to look at in a contract. The agreement shall be governed by the laws in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and by the applicable federal laws of Canada without regard to its conflict of laws principles. You torn to the non-exclusive jurisdiction of the courts of the province of British Columbia, Canada, severability, equitable remedies, dispute resolution. This is the last thing I wanted to talk about. Dispute resolution. Except for BBTV's equitable rights as set forth in this agreement, the parties hereby agree to submit any disputes or controversies arising from, relating to, or in connection with this agreement or the parties' respective obligations in connection therewith to binding arbitration. So Ethan could not have sued. Well, he could have sued, but it would have gotten yeeted because this had to go to binding arbitration. I don't know if Runkle covered this. Does the party that requires the binding arbitration have to pay for the arbitration in Canada? Because in the US, often the party requiring arbitration is the party that has to pay for the arbitration. And if that's true, I wonder if they just don't want to deal with having to go to arbitration, because this would have had to go to arbitration. So even if he sued, it would have been like BBTV would have come in and said, you can't sue us, there's an arbitration clause, and the court would have yeeted it to arbitration. So binding arbitration in Vancouver, BC, in accordance with the rules of International Commercial Arbitration Act, and only for actual monetary damages, if any, which limits it to just the money that they're alleging that BBTV took, that BBTV is now going to pay back. So you're limited not to the cost of your accountants, not to the cost of your lawyers, not to the this and the this and the that, just to the amount that you say that you're out. So actual monetary damages. The parties agree that an arbitration award resulting from any such arbitration shall be binding and conclusive upon the parties. In the event of any dispute, you shall not be entitled to and do hereby waive all right to any equitable relief whatsoever, including the right to rescind this agreement or any rights granted hereunder to enjoin, restrain, or interfere. Those are signing away some big rights, but there's the arbitration clause. It says where notices go, non-solicitation, independent legal advice. You represent that you have had an opportunity to review this agreement before signing it. Most agreements have this in it. Even if you don't go to a lawyer, you're signing away that you've had a lawyer look at it. So, and then the miscellaneous provisions, but this would have had to have gone to arbitration. It's not going to arbitration. BBTV backed down. Why? Because I think there's a very clear, well, With law, there's always an argument, but I think the argument leans in the creator's favor, in this case, Ethan Klein's favor, that a membership is a subscription. I think there's a fight to be had in this contract about what a super chat is, because I think Google classifies those as in-app purchases. I'm glad this is already resolved because I don't want to put that shit out on the internet to have other creators deal with it. But I think if other creators are in contracts like this, they need to take a look at this and really understand where their revenue is going. When BBTV approached me, the first thing I talked to them about was, I am not giving you a percentage of super chat revenue, membership revenue, super sticker revenue, any fan funding. Like, I'm just not doing it. So their contract now is substantially different. And they have changed this a bit to main approved platform revenue, other approved platform revenue, direct ad revenue, branded entertainment revenue. Those things are still the same. Let's see. Let's see how they define those things now. I haven't gone through this to look, so we're going to just do this together and go through and see how they define these things now. I wonder if I can just Control F myself and see if it says. But when we were having that conversation, I did not sign this. When we were having that conversation, we very much excluded fan funding because their value proposition was, hey, we can help you grow your ad revenue. I ultimately don't know if anyone can help me grow my ad revenue because of the types of things that I talk about on this platform. Some advertisers do not want ads running alongside of lawsuits, but then, our sponsors on the podcast love us, which is why the podcast is sponsored. Brands that I work with like StreamYard support us. And so it really is okay if Google ad revenue hates me. Let's see. We've got a definitions, and that's what I wanted to go to. These are the definitions. Ad, affiliate, approved platform ad, approved platform revenue, approved platform subscriptions. Means a subscription-based service on an approved platform offered or facilitated by the owner or operator, therefore, whereby the end user may access your videos, the timing and selection of which is at the end user's discretion, and for which the end user is charged a predetermined periodic fee to access such content as the end user selects during the period covered by the fee, e.g. YouTube Premium on YouTube. For clarity, approved platform subscription does not include the channel memberships feature. Isn't that an interesting change? Right? So the newer BBTV contracts make sure that platform subscriptions do not include channel memberships. What do y'all think of that? Are you surprised? And I think if they went to arbitration, this would be a very big conversation during discovery. When did you realize that you needed to make sure that channel memberships weren't part of subscriptions because they could be considered part of subscriptions? When did you decide to change this? Why did you decide to change this? And let's see if channel memberships are discussed later on in these terms. So at some point they realized, but they were still taking part of Ethan's channel memberships. Isn't it interesting? So, approved platform terms, BBTV account, BBTV approved platform revenue, channels, parties, property. There's a lot more definitions in here. The branded entertainment agreement is a little bit more full. Let's see. Channel membership feature is now defined on its own because, again, when this was written in 2017, channel memberships didn't exist. So they had to account for it somehow in some way. I just wonder when they delineated it in this contract. Channel membership feature means the feature on the approved platforms is, if any, which enables your viewers to make monthly payments to your channel in exchange for receiving exclusive or unique benefits. So this is now defined very clearly and separately. Claimed is defined, claimed content, confidential information, costs, cost of value added services, direct ad revenue, effective date. Let's see what else. End user feedback, force majeure. I didn't see a force majeure in the last one, but I wasn't really looking. Net revenue looks like it is still about the same. For any period means the revenue earned and actually received by BBTV in such period from a revenue generating activity permitted under this agreement, less the cost charge levy paid payable in relation to such revenue. For avoidance of doubt, net revenue includes branded entertainment revenue, direct ad net revenue, main approved platform revenue, and other approved platform revenue. So the amount of descriptions you have to go through to make sure that you are in the clear on this is really, really substantial. Super chat service means the feature on the approved platforms, if any, which enables your viewers, I almost read that wrong, your viewers of your videos, including live streaming videos, to pay fees in exchange for being highlighted and or promoted within the chat stream, including, for example, only having messages stay pinned in the ticker box for a set period of time and or other rewards, benefits, perks made available from time to time by the approved platforms and or you through this feature, e.g. super chat feature on YouTube. And I think that would extend beyond platforms. So with all of that, there have been some modifications. We're not done with the general terms, right? This is the rest of the term sheet, but there have been some updates and modifications and a bit more fullness to the BBTV contract, including like a interesting that there is a updated moral rights clause, revenue, defining what revenue is. This is now a 45-day clause, which is interesting. I bet that could be negotiated. Chargebacks are now addressed directly, an increasing problem across platforms. Let's see what else. The term, this is I believe, a 1-year term. There are some of these that used to be like 2 and 3 year terms where people didn't have any termination rights. Look how much longer the termination section is now. Intellectual property, who owns what and where and when. But this is a much more flushed out contract, right, over the years. And that's not surprising. So not surprising at all. So with all of that, yes, I did. It's more fulsomely flushed out. So with all of that, I think there's a reason that BBTV backed down pretty quickly. Whether they are going to take issue in any other substantial way with Ethan recording and releasing a phone call, releasing the terms of the contract, I don't know if they will. I don't know if they can withstand the PR issue and the fact that I wonder how many other creators wanted to have a chit chat with BBTV about their own contracts. And I imagine that those were substantial, especially for creators who might have signed on 2017, 2018, 2019. Creators who signed on, 2020, 21, 2, 3. I wonder if this contract was already really clearly delineating what is a membership, what is a super chat. But those that signed as those things were getting rolled out might not have as clear of an understanding of what's being taken. Here's the thing. Even though you might outsource checking your money, you still have to do it periodically, even though it's really, really stressful. Even though you trust people and hire professionals, you still have to check. And it is very frustrating when the people you trust to do their job, in Ethan's case, his accountant, seemed to not be doing those checks. It's really frustrating. So with all of that, what do you think? I don't know if the day of MCNs is gone. I think what we're going to see more is the ad networks where the company solely helps you place sponsorships and ads on videos and does not take over your ad revenue from YouTube. I can't see a creator wanting to turn over their AdSense account to somebody else. I just can't see it. So Lisa Bowers asked in the chat, are they returning Ethan's money? Yes. Just to put the final pin on this, we're going to swoop over to Twitter. I retweeted this yesterday, and I will pull this up right now because I think Ethan has a video today that's probably going live. Let's see. It's so funny that YouTube or notifications on Twitter just end at like 20. It's always more than that. BBTV is paying us back. This is their I don't know who's doing the thumbnails, but it is quite a thumbnail. But it did inform the shirt that I chose today. So there we go. BBTV is paying us back. And then he had tweeted a bit earlier. Where is it? Did I go to the wrong place? This is what I meant to do. Ethan also tweeted out earlier that he was getting paid back. Let's see. Is that on? It might have been on Ethan's page. Let's see. Here's some good news at least. BBTV unlinked our channels this morning. Seems to have gone smoothly. See you guys at 1. And then happy to announce that BBTV has agreed to pay us back in full. So that was about 21 hours ago. So the 600,000 odd whatever dollars that they are owed is going to get paid back. They're going to have to. The next thing though, it's like, woohoo. And then you have to go to your accountant and be like, okay, how do we now deal with this money that might be across multiple tax years? Like, it's not just like, we get our money back, yay. It's like, oh, fuck. Okay, now what do we do? So with all of that, I think we are good. We are going to move on to talking about the Mötley Crüe. So if your head's already spinning, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can do a quick summary. Real quick. Ethan Klein of the H3 podcast was fighting with his multi-channel network. Multi-channel networks are something that were much more popular back in the day of YouTube, not so popular now, that purport to help creators in a variety of ways, but they often take over creators' AdSense so that the money paid to creators goes directly to the multi-channel network. And then the multi-channel network pays back the creator some 45 to 60 days later. With all of that, Ethan Klein discovered that they were taking out 30%. They were taking that 30% of his membership revenue on his channel. I wonder if it was also super chats and super stickers. I think it probably was, but I don't know if we've heard official word on that. That all gets lumped together in one lump sum when it gets paid. When this was discovered, Ethan discovered it was over $600,000. It's honestly probably more because that was as far back as their records went, but it's probably more depending on when they turned on their memberships. They decided they were going to sue BBTV over this money. Yes, there's an arbitration clause here. It would have gotten forced to arbitration, but BBTV backed down after Ethan made numerous videos saying, this is what we just discovered about our MCN. This is the terms of our contract. What in the ever loving fuck is happening here? The contract, though it would be nice if it was super, super clear, the contract was written before these things existed. So a court would, or an arbitrator would have to interpret where the new thing falls. I think given the language of the contract, the new thing clearly falls under a category that they were not supposed to touch. And it falls, and he wins with it's not going to be touched. And I think that's part of why they backed down. I also think they probably couldn't sustain the PR. I think that was a twofold decision. That's just my opinion, speculating from the outside, watching how Ethan's talked about it, now looking at this contract and saying, this is not a clear win for them. When we look at the Haley Page contract, we've had a lot of conversations about, hey, yeah, it sucks when you sell your name, but this contract's real freaking clear about what happened here. This is not that. I think this contract leans much more in favor of Ethan Klein arguing that they shouldn't have touched this. And then you add the PR bit to it, and BBTV conceded within what days? When did this all pop off? This, I think, popped off over Easter weekend. So this would have popped off. I have not been on the internet much over the last weekend and this week, since I've been on so much with trial coverage for the last like 8 weeks. So I think it popped off over the weekend and then came to a resolution by what? Wednesday? So Ethan was dealing with it behind the scenes until they're like, we're not paying you back. And then it went public and then it resolved very quickly. So with all things, I think bringing attention and bringing the sunlight into what's going on is something that Ethan does do. He absolutely will say, I'll tell you exactly what my deal is. This is what's going on, with a lot of transparency that other creators are sometimes nervous to do. And that is the end. So with all of that, Ethan has won his kerfuffle, the war with BBTV, and I hope other creators are informed by this. And if you want more of the behind the scenes of YouTube and the business of YouTube and being a creator, Check out the Simply Podlogical episode covering this. Look at Ethan's content when he talked about how they ended up in this contract and why. And know that if you become a creator, these are the types of things you also have to navigate. YouTube has made it much better than it used to be a creator and run this on your own. It didn't used to be that way. So you have to look at kind of what YouTube was like in 2017 when this was signed and why those decisions were made. Look, I couldn't have done what I do right now in 2017. I literally pull up StreamYard, record my podcast, do all of this. Unless the fucking power goes out, it's pretty easy technologically to sit down and figure out how to be a creator. You can monetize on YouTube. There's a very clear path to monetization. They tell you in a banner in your studio when you can be monetized and you click the buttons and fill the things out. There is so much more help and guidance. Being a creator now is so much easier than it was. I mean, my first YouTube video went up was it 2016? I think it was 2016 when my first video went up. It was a much different world on YouTube then. So with all of that, let's talk about Mötley Crüe, shall we? Thank you all for being here. If you are new, just a quick plug to do the YouTubey things, but more than doing the YouTubey things, y'all, I want to break the TV and film category on the podcast. So if you have not downloaded the Emily show, Emily, you've talked about your podcast a lot today. Yes, we're in a new category. I get competitive. All the views on YouTube don't count towards the audio categories. So if you like the podcast, please go download it on your favorite podcast player so it can continue charting. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody. I understand. I know Ethan's live. I hear you in the chat. I see you. Thank you for doing the things and for your support. All right, let us talk about Mötley Crüe. How many of you are here to talk about the crew? I see you. Just tell me in the chat. You're ready. You're ready for it. I know. I think this is the beginning of a very long suit. I do. Hold on. Let me try. What am I looking for? I was looking for something real quick. So I'm going to swoop. Don't worry. I'm going to swoop. I wish I had music to swoop. No, I'd get fucking copy claimed. I wish I had music to swoopy doop to, but I would absolutely get copy claimed on it. So let's just, go home sweet home and pull this up. Let's go. Today, we are doing a first look. This always goes so well, yet I keep doing them. A first look of the Mick Mars Mötley Crüe lawsuit. It's a really interesting suit because this is a contract dispute, but this is also a corporation's dispute. So I'm going to probably be referencing back to the Toddy Westbrook lawsuit because that was also like a derivative shareholder issue when it first started with everything with their former business partner. So this is actually looking for a writ to compel action. That's different than what we normally see. So we're going to go through all of this and talk about what that even means. Lindsay is in the chat asking the important questions. Is it on 45-line paper? No, thank fuck it's not. It is on 28-page paper. Carla said, we are taking a ride on the wild side, y'all, with this contract dispute. Well, this might be a long stream today, so here we go, because I know there's a lot in this. But I just, tell me if you're with me. I love the kind of behind the scenes of all of this. It's why when I decided to switch to pop culture coverage primarily, one of the first things I covered was the Kanye West music industry contracts. This kind of behind the scenes on what happens in businesses that I have not worked in is fascinating to me. There is so much legal behind almost everything that we do, but especially a band like Mötley Crüe that has not just touring, but has their music and has all the rest of it. There are so much here in business formations. It's really fascinating. All of you are the best. Look at you with the Mötley Crüe songs, lyrics, titles. I just keep going. It's just warming my heart. Yes, we need to shout to the devil. Lisa, do we need to shout at the devil for anything? Probably. Probably. Carrie, how do you find it? Spotify? The podcast is on Spotify and Apple, but this chat is so quick and so smart. Y'all are the greatest chat on the internet. Y'all are smart and attractive. You know, you set healthy boundaries, you take care of yourselves. I love y'all. I love y'all. All right, let's do this. Oh boy. All right. Verified petition for writ of mandate to compel inspection and copying of books, records, and documents of Mötley Crüe Touring Inc., Mötley Crüe Inc., Red, White, and Crüe Inc., Masters 2000 Inc., Crüe Fest LLC, Mötley Records LLC, and Masters 2008 LLC. They are asking the court to compel records being turned over. That is what this lawsuit is over. Force these companies, and these are the companies that are underlying a rock star like this or a band like this. These are all the different companies underlying it. Jordan. Don't go away mad. Thank you, Jordan. So we're going to go through why Mick Mars is trying to get an inspection and copying of all of the books and records and documents, and how Mick Mars ended up getting pushed to the point that they didn't have access to this. So I don't always do this, but I'm going to do it now because this is not your normal kind of contract dispute. This is, well, it is and it's not. This is asking the court to do something kind of unique, like give us the books. We also saw this in the Toddy Westbrook case. Give us the books. We're going to go to the end. Let me do this so it doesn't make everyone motion sick. We're going to go to the end and look at the prayer for relief first. So we keep the prayer for relief in mind when we look at the 40 pages of T. I don't think we're going to get through every single one, every single page, but we're going to get through a lot of it. We're going to get the highlights. So let's look at this cause of action for the writ of mandate, and then we'll keep this in mind. Luna, so good. So good. Writ of mandate. Petitioner adapts, realleges, and incorporates by reference all the shit that we're going to go cover above under CCP 1085A. A writ of mandate may be issued by any court to any inferior tribunal, corporation, board, or person to compel the performance of an act which the law specifically enjoins as a duty resulting from an office, trust, or station, or to compel the admission of a party to the use and enjoyment of a right or office which the party is entitled and from which the party is unlawfully precluded by the inferior tribunal. Hey, the court under this code section can make a corporation do some shit. We're asking you to do that. CCP 1086 provides the following. The writ must be issued and in all cases where there is not a plain, speedy, and adequate remedy in the ordinary course of law, it must be issued upon the verified petition of the party beneficially interested. Corporations Code 1603. Upon refusal of a lawful demand for inspection, the Superior Court of the proper county may enforce the right of inspection. So, hey, and we'll go above. They probably requested an inspection of the records and were told no. And when they were told no, they're like, fine, we will have to go to court and fight it out to get an inspection of the records. Corporations Code 17704.10F states, in addition to the remedies provided in the other sections and any other remedies, a court of competent jurisdiction, adequate jurisdiction, may enforce a duty of making and mailing or delivering the information and financial statements required. So, hey, here's all the law. Here's all the law that says you can, court, make them do this. A writ of mandate lies to compel companies such as respondents to perform an official act required by law, in this case, to make available its company records for inspections and copying by petitioner. Respondents have a duty under the Corporations Code to do so. Petitioner has a beneficial interest in the issuance of a writ of mandate compelling respondents to make its company records and processes available for inspection. Like, I can't just ask them to do this. But petitioner has a beneficial interest because petitioner is part of the band, and probably a part of these corporations as well. Petitioner has no plain, speedy, or adequate alternative remedy at law to challenge the refusal of respondents to allow petitioner to inspect and copy the company's financial records and or make extracts therefrom. Respondents have the ability to comply. Like, you could just turn over your books. Respondents have failed to comply. Petitioner seeks to enforce his rights and declare respondents' obligations under law. In particular, petitioner asks his courts to declare respondents are legally required under California law to make available the records requested in each of the demands. A 25% shareholder or member of each of the respondents, petitioner has ample standing. So, hey, I own a fourth of all of these companies. Therefore, I am a substantial enough owner. Again, I can't just go say, give me all your books. I don't have a financial interest in it. You can't do that. But a 25% shareholder or member of each of the companies does. So based on the foregoing, they are asking the court to issue the writ to force all the companies to turn over their books for attorney's fees, for the cost of the suit, and for other such relief. So now let's go see what all the kerfuffle is about. I truly don't know. This is a first look. When this started getting reported, I got a whole bunch of messages in our member spaces, on Instagram, on Twitter. Emily, are you going to cover this? And I was like, oh, music. Yes. And I just saw a new food lawsuit today. So maybe next week we'll have to do a food court Friday of nothing but food court, because there's a new one. So let us continue. Introduction. After 41 years as a founding member of the band Mötley Crüe, petitioner Mick Mars, the lead guitarist and backing vocalist for the band, announced that due to his horrifically debilitating, I don't know how to pronounce that, ankylosing. I don't know how to pronounce the condition that they are citing here. He could no longer tour with the band. He made it clear, however, that he could still perform with them in a residency situation, could still record with them, and could definitely still be part of the band, but he could no longer physically handle the rigors of the road. So, hey, if you guys stay put and I don't have to travel location to location, we can do it. But if I have to travel, I can't do it. I imagine traveling like that is real fucking hard on people. I can't imagine at all what traveling on the road like that is. So it's like, hey, if we do a residency and I'm not traveling city to city, I can do it. So let's continue. How did Mars's brother? Oh dear. How did Mars's brothers of 41 years respond to Mars's tragic announcement? They noticed an emergency shareholders meeting for the band's main corporate entity in order to throw Mars out of the band, to fire him as a director of the corporation, to fire him as an officer of the corporation, and to take away his shares of the corporation. Oh dear. When he did not go away quietly, he just went away. They purported to fire him from the 6 additional band corporations and LLCs. There's 7 corporations involved here. And when he said, hey, after 41 years, I physically can no longer do this. Can we modify the way we're doing this? He's alleging their response was just go away. Yes, chat, he went away mad. I was like, fuck it. Let's ride. This would be heartbreaking. Also, lawsuits are allegations of shade. Remember, we're only getting one side of this at this point. Always a reminder. We are getting the side most favorable to the party. But if you're going to try to yeet someone from a corporation, there's generally a paper trail. So this wouldn't, if this is going on, this wouldn't necessarily be that hard to prove. There would be actions, emails, things happening that you would be able to say, look, this is when they called the shareholder meeting. Suspicious from the manner in which the band was treating him, Mars requested that they provide him with the corporate and business documents from each of the band's corporations and LLCs that they were purporting to fire him. so that he could determine if they had any semblance of a right to do so, and so that he could determine if the corporations and LLCs had been operating properly. He's like, oh yeah? Let's take a look. Can you even do that? And what he may have missed as far as how he could be in such a position. Petitioner, by and through his counsel, brings this action to compel respondents and each of them to allow petitioner to inspect the respondent's corporate accounting and third-party records. Petitioner is a 25% shareholder or member of each of the corporations. Shareholders of California corporations have a statutory right to inspect corporate bylaws, books, records, accounting, financial, business. Is this working? So you get to do all the things. Nanner, this is a great question. Why did he not have a copy already? When you've got this many corporate entities, Mick Mars is probably not reviewing the corporate books. The accountants probably come to them and say, hey, this is what went on this year. And they go, okay. Because there's like people on top of people on top of people. Petitioner is a director and respondent is a director of respondent corporations. It's well settled law that directors of California corporations have an unlimited statutory right. Yeah. Give me all your books. When did they say no? Tell me about the things. Ooh, let's look at who the corporations are, and then we'll find out about the things. PK said, keep in mind that Mick is 71 years old. I couldn't physically tour, and I'm half that. Oh, me either. By the way, if I was in different cities all the time, I would die. There's no way. I'm like, I travel once a month, maybe. I don't know how they do it. The Dave Matthews Band now has like a whole like workout trailer and like regime. I want to know the regime. Like, how does Taylor Swift stay healthy on the road? Like, I want to know all the things. I'm so curious. I don't want to get sidetracked. If anybody knows, will somebody just send me? Like, why? I need videos on that. Like, how do you stay healthy on the road like that? There's no way I could do this. Nor do I want to. It seems really fucking hard. I mean, 4 days at BravoCon and I'm fucking toast. All right, let's see. Petitioner is informed and believed that Mötley Crüe Touring is, and at all relevant times, was a California corporation. Mötley Crüe Inc., California corporation. Red, White, and Crüe. I wonder what Red, White, and Crüe is in charge of. Because you can kind of be like, okay, Mötley Crüe Touring is the entity in charge of tours. Mötley Crüe Inc. is probably the overall parent corporation. Red, White, and Crüe, are there maybe merch? I don't know. That's me guessing. Masters 2000 might be the licensing and rights to the songs. MTI, MCI, RWC, and Masters 2000 are collectively hereinafter referred to as the respondent corporations. Great. Petitioner is informed and believes that Crüefest LLC is a California corporation. Motley Records LLC, Masters 2008 LLC. Oh, the music industry contracts. And then they're going through all the does. We don't need that. Jurisdiction and venue, everything's in California, fine. Factual allegations. Facts. Red, White, and Crüe. Is there a cruise? If there's a cruise, maybe that's it. I think Red, White, and Crüe might be merch too, but if there's a cruise, it could be cruise. Red, White, and Crüe clothing. Cool. Merch. Thanks, chat. I'm going to keep asking. All right. In or about 1981, Mars, after having played guitar in many bands in the Los Angeles area, put a one ad in the recycler. Wasn't there just recently a Mötley Crüe movie? Didn't they just do a whole chat? Let me know what it was. Put a one ad in the recycler, which was answered by Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee, who were forming a band. After a successful audition, Mars joined Sixx and Lee, and they started auditioning lead singers. At one point, although Lee had gone to high school with Vince Neil, Neil, a singer from Covina. Hey, Covina, what's up? The Dirt. Yes, thank you. I need to go watch The Dirt after this. Covina. A singer from Covina, California. It was Mars who had seen Neil perform with another band and suggested that Neil join the band, which he ultimately did. Which he did. Ultimately, it was also Mars that came up with the name Mötley Crüe. How did they do that? Chat, do we know? Mars played lead and rhythm guitar and sang backing vocals for the band for 41 years. In fact, only he and Sixx played in the band continuously through the band's existence. Well, yes, there were some up, there was some down. There was some things. as Neil and Lee left the band at different times, ultimately to return. Similarly, I got to see them all last summer. Similarly, only Mars and Six were shareholders and members in the band corporations and LLCs throughout the band's existence. As the band once said, Mick's sound helped define Mötley Crüe from the minute he plugged in his guitar at our very first rehearsal together. I also love the band history. Ooh, band controversy. Hey, here's all the tea. I mean, this is really a let us see your books lawsuit, but let's just lay it all the fuck out here. Why not? Band controversy. The 41 years with Mötley Crüe was not without incident. Oh no. Two of the members, not Mars, were addicted to heroin for much of their careers, and one has had a contentious, severe alcohol addiction. One of the members, not Mars. It's so interesting that they're clarifying to the court, like, not Mars. One of the members, not Mars, was in the middle of a 3-day cocaine and alcohol binge when he ran out of alcohol and drove to a liquor store for more liquor with at least 2 times the legal blood alcohol limit. On his way home, I forgot about this. On his way home, he got into an accident doing 65 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone, killing his passenger, a fellow musician, for which he was convicted of manslaughter, sent to jail and 5 years of probation, and ordered to pay $2.6 million in restitution with 200 hours of community service. I completely forgot about that. Years later, he filed for bankruptcy protection. He was later fired from the band. The same member was arrested for attacking a record producer. 2 years later, he was arrested for choking. Can I say that on YouTube? We're just saying it. It's in the lawsuit. Arrested for choking a prostitute and throwing her against a wall. The next year, he was arrested for punching a sound man. A few years after, he pleaded no contest to reckless driving and charged to a reckless driving charge to avoid a DUI conviction. Wait, is that the same person who collided the vehicle? Yes. Who's giving him that deal? Sorry, I just switched into prosecutor mode. If you've got a DUI after you have a DUI where you've killed someone, normally those don't get reduced, but when you're famous, things happen. Chat's asking, is any of this relevant? I don't know. We're going to find out. Yeah, I remember that, but I had forgotten until it came up. Let's see. I don't know why this is all relevant. Yes. A few years after that, he was convicted of and went to jail for drunk driving. Well, yes, that's now a third time. A year later, he was arrested for battery. A few years after that, he was arrested for battery after he pulled a female autograph seeker to the ground by her hair. I didn't know that. Another band member, not Mars, was placed on probation repeatedly for a series of violent incidents and ultimately convicted of felony spousal abuse for repeatedly kicking his wife while she was holding their 7-week-old baby. This led to a 3-year suspended prison sentence, 6 months in jail, and 3 years on probation, and a rebuke from the judge that his conduct was intolerable in any kind of civilized society. Judges use that language a lot. Intolerable in a civilized society. Another band member, not Mars, was jailed in Japan when under the influence of hallucin and alcohol and reacting to finding out about Mars's relationship with a backup dancer, whom Mars ultimately married, hurled a bottle of Jack Daniels at Mars to scare him and ended up injuring a random Japanese passenger. Passenger of what? In the head when the bottle shattered on the front wall of a rail car on the bullet train. What? The same band member was convicted of inciting a riot at a show in Greensboro, North Carolina. Well, don't incite a riot. Well, what did Mars do? Chat, is there any Mars tea? Did Mars do things? Because Mars is leaving out any of Mars's behavior. Or is Mars just like, fuck it, y'all are wild. Here's all the tea on everybody else. Y'all are nuts. Oh, rock stars and bad decisions. Oh, this doesn't say bad decisions. This says banned decisions. Over the years, Six often executed banned decisions without the consent or even knowledge of his bandmates. In fact, at one point, he maneuvered himself into having a super vote in the band, whereby he essentially had double the vote to avoid ties. How did that happen? The other members have been routinely sent documents with instructions to sign immediately on Friday at 5 p.m., often with a note that everyone else had already signed, which on many occasions proved untrue. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Um, Lindsay said Mars is older than the others and has a rep for being the boring old guy. That would be me. That would be me. That would be me. They're like, you're boring. Yep. I need to sleep. Mars was the mellow one. Somebody had to be, it sounds like. Mars was you guys are like, Mars was the good one. Somebody had to be sane. How is the guitarist the same one? There you go. Mars' painful and chronic disability. For most of his professional year, Mars has suffered you guys told me in the chat, ankylosing spondylitis. I apologize for not being able to pronounce things. Hereinafter AS, which is a chronic inflammatory form of arthritis that mainly affects the spine and pelvis. That sounds fucking miserable. Mars was, as somebody who's had back, when I look at spine and pelvis, I'm like, ugh, me and my L5S1 spinal fusion feels the back pain. Mars was initially diagnosed with the disease when he was 27 years old. The disease has increasingly impaired his movement throughout his life and caused him severe chronic pain. I don't doubt that. This condition and pain led to a hip replacement surgery at the end of 2004. Over the years, the disease caused Mars's lower spine to seize up and freeze completely solid, causing scoliosis in his lower back and also compressing his spine downward. How are you standing up for 3 hours during a show? That must be incredibly painful. And compressing his spine downward so that he is now at least 3 inches shorter than he was in high school. His spine is now completely seized from the pelvis to skull, known as bamboo spine. He cannot move his head in any direction. The extraordinary amount of inflammation present in Mars's body has caused tremendous fatigue, so that, among other things, he must sleep over 24 hours after traveling overseas. During much of the band's recent tenure, Six continually gaslighted Mars by telling him that he had some sort of a cognitive dysfunction and that his guitar playing was subpar, claiming that Mars forgot his chords and sometimes started playing the wrong songs. Oh dear. Not the gaslighting. Also, trying to tell people when they're in pain that it's in their head, it triggers me. So if I get snappy about that, just know that always really pisses me off. It happens to so many people who have chronic pain. It's like, it must be in your head. It's like, no, it's in the body. It hurts. So that makes me a little bit angry and a little bit sad. But again, this is one version of events, allegations and shade. In 2022, Mötley Crüe entered into an agreement with Live Nation to do a U.S. stadium tour with Def Leppard, Poison, and Joan Jett. They did. I went. It was great. And later going on the rest of the world with Def Leppard. Initially, they were to do 12 stadium dates in the U.S. Joan Jett sounded so good. Before the tour started, Mars advised the band that as a result of the excruciating pain and other issues related to his AS and the rigors of the road, the U.S. leg of the tour would be his last tour. He also made it clear that he was not retiring and that he would make himself readily available for recording, Vegas or other location residencies, and other band-related activities. The band's manager stated that he accepted and understood Mars's decision and that everything would be fine. He assured Mars that there would not be any problems and that the fans would be informed with dignity. Well, dignity is what we need in all of this. Is, hey, Mars won't be on the road. Okay. If all of you went on this tour, you feel free to put in where you saw them. I saw them in Nashville, because Nashville. So, all right. Although my hands are so dry today, it's actually, the texture is just driving me crazy. So if you hear me doing that, that is why. Although Mars has indicated that the 12 U.S. stadium tour dates would be his last shows while touring, the 12 anticipated shows ultimately expanded to 36 shows, and Mars performed at every single one of them in constant pain. Six's gaslighting came to a crescendo during the stadium tour when he, knowing that this was Mars's last tour as a result of his increasingly painful and debilitating AS, and apparently already plotting to force him out of the band to take his shares, repeatedly told Mars that he was playing the wrong chords and that fans were complaining about his playing. Astonishingly, Six made these claims about Mars's playing, while he, Six, did not play a single note on bass during the entire US tour. Oh dear. Oh, the shade. Ironically, 100% of Six's bass parts were nothing but recordings. Six was even seen fist pumping in the air with his strumming hand while the bass part was playing. Oh, not the backing track. Not the backing track. In fact, a significant portion of Neil's vocals were also pre recorded. Even some of Lee's drumming parts were recordings. Some fans actually noticed that Lee was walking towards his drum set as they heard his drum part begin. Okay. Mars at times on the tour. I wish I knew this before. I would have paid much more attention. Mars at times on the tour did not play the wrong chords, but due to Mars at times on the tour did play the wrong chords, but not due to any cognitive dysfunction. He was playing live and his in-ear monitors were constantly malfunctioning, causing Mars to be unable to hear his own instrument. That would be real frustrating. The fact is that Mars is rarely mocked or criticized online. He is a quiet member of the group. He shows up to play, puts his heart and soul into each performance. Conversely, the other members are often criticized online, particularly Neil, who is routinely torn to shreds for, among other things, not remembering the songs. Mars's last concert date was September 9th, 2022. Oh dear. Post-US tour treatment by Mötley Crüe. Just 1 month later, so 1 month after September, 1 month after September 9th, and still several months before the world tour was to resume, an attorney purporting to represent MCI and RWC, but who had represented Mars in the past, interesting, sent a draft separation and release agreement to Mars's attorney. Send it to Daryl! To Mars's attorney on October 14th, 2022. The agreement acknowledged that Mars is an officer, director, and shareholder of the Mötley Crüe entities, but erroneously indicated both that, quote, Mars no longer desires to furnish his services and perform in the band, and, quote, Mars no longer desires to be an officer or director of the Mötley Crüe entities. The agreement went on to state that Mars hereby resigns as an officer and director of the Mötley Crüe entities, effective October date 2022. Oh dear. Well, that's a miscommunication, isn't it? After 41 years as a founding band member and shareholder, officer, director of all of the entities, the agreement provided that Mars's share in the band's touring profits was to decrease from 25% to 5% for the remaining portion of the tour and to 0% for any and all future tours. Footnote 1. Countless members have left countless bands, typically with much less than 41 years, or died and still maintained, or their estates maintained, their shareholder, officer, and director status, as well as their commensurate rights to profit. So it's like, no. What we're not going to do. That would be a real interesting thing. It's like, that doesn't accurately reflect what I told you I wanted to do. With respect to the merchandise and the name and goodwill of Mötley Crüe that Mars helped to build over the same period of time, again, the agreement provided that Mars's share was to be reduced from 25 to 5 for any merchandise using the name Mötley Crüe or any related logo, and 0 for any merchandise that named or depicted the guitar player that the band hired to replace Mars on tour, John 5. In exchange for this reduction from 25 to 5, Mars shall be deemed to have transferred any and all rights, title, interests that he may have in the income, assets, trade names, and goodwill. Who would sign this of the band, the Mötley Crüe? No. There's no way. Who would even send this with a straight face? Like, oh, by the way, you're a founding member of the band, but you have no more rights to the likeness of the band, the name of the band, the trademark of the band. There's no way. There's no way. Not a chance. At the same time, the agreement allowed the band to use Mars's name and likeness indefinitely, requiring him to ratify and consent to the continuing use and exploitation of his name and likeness by Live Nation, Global, and the Mötley Crüe entities. Yeah, no. Finally, the agreement required Mars to release the band from any and all liability, essentially giving up any rights that he may have against the band. No. 11 days later, on October 25th, 2022, when Mars did not immediately sign the horrifically unfair one-sided separation and release agreement, I agree with that. If it's as presented here, I agree with that. Mars's lawyer must have just been like, the fuck we are. I would have been so mad. I would have been so mad as a lawyer receiving that. I would have been like, are you motherfucking crazy? There is no way after 41 years that we're selling any of this. Like, fuck no. I was so mad. I was so mad. Lawyer rage. So 11 days after Mars did not sign this, Mars was served with a notice of special meeting of shareholders of Mötley Crüe Inc. So he didn't sign. This is where the yeeting allegations come from. In which it was announced that Nikki Sixx, the president of Mötley Crüe Inc., at the direction of the majority of the corporation's directors, scheduled a special meeting of the shareholders via Zoom for November 4th, the minimum amount of time allowed. The notice went on to state that the purpose of the special meeting would be to consider and act on the following matters. 1. Acceptance of the resignation of McMars. 2. Termination of McMars as an officer and director of MCI and the purchase of his shares. 3. Employment of a replacement guitarist. On October 26, Mars released the following press statement. Mick Mars, co-founder and lead guitarist of the heavy metal band Mötley Crüe for the past 41 years, has announced today that due to his ongoing painful struggle with AS, he will no longer be able to tour with the band. Mick will continue to be a member of the band, but can no longer handle the rigors of the road. AS is an extremely painful and crippling degenerative disease, which affects the spine. Although Mars made it clear in his press statement that he was not retiring, so let me get the timing of this right. He got the separation agreement. He didn't sign it. So on October 25th, the band came to him and was like, "We are going to force you out." And so on October 26th, he released a public statement. That's probably to his best protection. Wow. Okay. Although Mars made it clear in his press statement that he was not retiring, but only unable to tour, the remaining band members and shareholders released their own statements less than 24 hours later. So now they're taking it to the court of public opinion, taking it directly to PR, announcing that Mars was retiring from the band and the guitarist John Five was replacing him. The statement was signed, "We'll see all you crew heads out on the road, Vince, Tommy, and Nikki." On November 2nd, 2022, Mars's attorney wrote to MCI's attorney saying, "What the fuck?" No, that was me. Responding to the separation and release agreement in the letter, Mars's attorney disabused MCI's counsel of the notion that Mars no longer desires to furnish his service from the band. Oh, they put in what he said. Okay, great. Here's the real tea, is the lawyers going after each other. Mars's counsel wrote, quote, "Mr. Mars has no desires to leave the group or otherwise give up his position as an officer or director of the various corporations, and he certainly has no desire to give up his shares in those corporations. He simply is not physically able to perform on tours anymore due to the increasing severe pain and discomfort that has overcome his body from his AS. He does not rule out performing occasionally with the band nor performing during some type of residence. He simply can no longer handle the rigors of touring on the road." Well, that was very kind. Where is the snark? I'm ready for the rest of the snark. Finally, Mars's counsel insisted that the band not be allowed to gang up on Mars during the shareholder meeting and that Mars's counsel and his business manager be allowed to attend the meeting. That's fair. Counsel also requested that the meeting be recorded via Zoom or otherwise stenographically recorded by a certified court reporter, as is fairly standard at such meetings. On November 3rd, the day before the shareholders meeting, a different attorney for the band, one who represented Mars and the band with Mars in it on numerous occasions, wrote to Mars's attorney in response to the November 2nd letter indicating how reasonable their offer of 5% was. Come on now. Come on now. When one member had been thrown out of the band and another member quit the band decades earlier, they did not receive anything. That was a little different. That's why they put all the circumstances up above. It is. We're back to the 5%. Chat, we're back to the 5%. He should take that 5%. It always comes back to the fucking 5%. We're never getting away from the 5%. That's why they put in all the information about the other circumstances, because the lawyers came back with, well, other people had a harder time. The 5% is really reasonable. That's a little bit different than being 71 years old with an autoimmune disease and saying, hey, there's a part of this that I cannot do. There's room to negotiate that, but not give up all your rights in the corporations and all of the intellectual property in the name of the band and your own image and likeness. Come on. There was no counteroffer to Mars's counter. There was just a threat that if Mars did not accept the 5%, he would be removed as an officer and director of all of the band's corporate entities, and they would force him to sell his shares based on the book value with no assigned value to the Mötley Crüe name. Oh, that's terrible. As such, if your client rejects the severance package that was graciously offered to him by the band, he will get next to nothing. I suggest you think about the repercussions of this decision. They went to govern yourselves accordingly. Oh, that escalated quickly. I suggest you think about the repercussions of this decision. The lawyer fuck you in that is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. But I'm going to start saying that to my kids. I don't want to go to bed yet. I suggest you think about the repercussions of this decision. Because tomorrow morning, you're going to yell at me when I wake you up for school. But this is just, oh, the lawyers. Wow. I bet that's why they filed this. That's sassy. That's real sassy. I suggest you think about the repercussions of this decision. They're like, touche, I bet you think about the repercussions of this decision. We're going to put it all in a lawsuit. Here you go. This is what's going on behind the scenes. How much music are you downloading now? Are you streaming it? Do you want to go on tour? Or are you just like, hey, what the fuck is this? After 41 years, this is how you treat somebody? This is wild. This is making me mad. I was not expecting to be this riled up about this. I'm going to try to wait for the other side. This is a well-written complaint. I'm invested. I'm deeply invested in this at this point. My, oh my. I suggest you think about the repercussions of this decision. I might need a shirt that says that for BravoCon. The provision of the 1987 MCI shareholder agreement that the band's attorney cited for Mars's ouster as an officer and director was Section 1G VI, which is what, 6? Section 1G6. To give it context, Section 1G is entitled Termination of an Officer Director, and the grounds for termination are set forth in Section 1G I through VI, 1 through 6. As follows. Engaged in misconduct or willful breach of this agreement or of the shareholders' employment agreement with MC of such a nature as to render such shareholders' continued presence as an officer or director of the MC personally or professionally obnoxious or detrimental to the other shareholders. I don't think I've ever seen obnoxiousness as grounds for yeeting. Bans are so funny. If you're obnoxious, we're obnoxious or detrimental to the other shareholders. Been convicted by final action of any court of any offense punishable as a felony, including moral turpitude. I mean, I wonder when they put those clauses in there. Made an assignment for the breach, made an assignment for the benefit of the creditors or been declared or has been declared or has been filed a petition seeking to be declared bankrupt. So if you go bankrupt, you might be yeeted. Been declared to be insane or incompetent to manage such shareholders' affairs. So if you ended up in like a conservatorship, caused MC to be convicted of a crime or to incur criminal penalties in material amounts. So like if you incite a riot at a concert and then the entire band gets fined or other things. Engaged in other conduct constituting legal cause for such termination. Well, what section did they cite? Engaged in other conduct constituting legal cause for such termination. What conduct? What conduct did Mick Mars engage in? Like, Cheryl C said, oh my God, who else thinks Emily needs to watch Dirt tonight to get the full impact of the lawsuit? Yes, me. Yes, I will. Great suggestion, Cheryl. And then I'll let you all know what I think about it on Tuesday. Or in a reel later. What time is it? I know I have a meeting at some point today. I just need to check my calendar because I can't remember when they are. Because I'm not done. We're not done until the end of this. Oh, good. I've got time. Notwithstanding that one or more of the other band members has violated almost all of the first 5 sections, subsections, that's why they put all the behaviors up above in there. The band chose subsection 6 to oust Mars out of being a shareholder, officer, director of the band's entities. Essentially, the band's position was and is that Mars, because he suffers from a debilitating disease, has, quote, engaged in other conduct constituting legal cause for termination. Actually, someone's debilitating disease or disability is not legal action for termination. How is that legal? How is that legal? In further support for their claim, the band's attorney asserted the following. There is undisputed legal cause here for Mick's removal. Mick is unable to perform as a full-fledged member of the band. Among other things, as demonstrated during the last tour, he repeatedly forgets his chords and does not play the right song, plays chords in a different song while on stage, and so on. Of course, even if the foregoing were true, which is most certainly not, one, it is difficult to imagine how playing the wrong chord could be other conduct constituting a legal cause for such termination when the other performances were largely, and in Six's case, 100% pre-recorded. And two, Mars was the first one not only to admit, but to actually announce that he could no longer perform on tour. Not playing on tour has literally nothing to do with whether or not he can act as a shareholder, officer, director of the band. The band's attorney closed the letter by making it clear that they would not allow any videotaping of the shareholders meeting. No stenographer would be allowed. Mars's business manager would not be allowed to attend, and Mars's attorney can attend as an observer. On the same day, November 3rd, 2022, Mars's attorney wrote back to the band's attorney, reiterating Mars's request that the meeting be recorded and expressing confusion about, quote, what the band has to hide with respect to this particular meeting. Oh, the lawyer letters are going to get snappy, I imagine. I want them to reply with all of the emails attached. In addition, Mars's attorney stated the following. Next, if the shareholders meeting proceeds tomorrow as you describe, it appears that the band is pulling the reverse of the old, quote, you can't fire me, I quit. Quite clearly, Mars has not, and other members of the band have, violated the terms of paragraph 1G. Your attempt to squeeze some alleged performance issues into the phrase conduct constituting legal cause for such termination is absurd. More importantly, however, for the band to think long and hard about is that asserting this as a basis for termination also opens the door for a lot of public scrutiny into the quality of the performances by the other members of the band. Govern yourself accordingly. Finally, Mars's attorney raised the issue of conflict of interest and connect. Of course, that was coming. Of conflict of interest in connection with the attorney's representation of the band's manager and his companies for several years, and his representation of the band, including Mars and Mars individually. Mars is yet to receive a response to that conflict inquiry. It's like, hey, you are my lawyer. How are you coming for me? It's a very, very real question. And I think one that the lawyer probably needs to think long and hard about. Because how do you come for Mars if you've represented Mars personally? Like, how do you do that? Within minutes, the band's attorney responded, you don't get to dictate the rules of how this corporation does its business as it has for many years. The business manager will not attend. The meeting will not be recorded. MCI meetings have never been recorded. You will be there as an observer. If you disrupt or interrupt the meeting or prevent it from going forward, you will be asked to leave. All rights reserved. Where's the with peace and love at the end of this? Oh my. The shareholder meeting of November 4th, 2022. On November 4th, 2022, MCI held its shareholder meeting. The meeting was run by the attorney who had been writing most of the correspondence to Mars's attorney. The meeting was attended by two of the three other shareholders, the band's manager, Mars, and Mars's attorney. Mars's business manager, the person in charge of all of Mars's finances, was not allowed to attend during the meeting. During the meeting, Six made it clear to Mars that he believed that the offer was a generous one. Oh boy. After 41 consecutive years with the band, during the meeting, Six made it clear. Were Six and Mars friends, or is this a long-standing beef? Like, what the fuck is this? During the meeting, Six made it clear to Mars that he believed that the offer was a generous one and that Mars, after 41 consecutive years with the band, did not deserve anything going forward. What? This is stunning. Look, these are allegations at this point. If this is true, this is absolutely stunning. I can't imagine the rage. Like the rage. He also made it clear that the other members were never going to agree to allow Mars to collect any income for any touring beyond the present world tour. Six further gaslit Mars by severely criticizing his performances on the US tour and exclaimed that there is no way that the band could tour with Mars anymore. Mars's attorney pointed out that it was Mars who already said that he could no longer tour with the band, not because he was playing poorly, and certainly not playing more poorly than the other band members who were not playing at all, but because he could no longer physically handle the rigors of the road due to his disease. Dummies. The word that he wanted to put in motherfuckers at the end of that, but didn't. You can read it. You can hear it. You can hear it at the end there. But none of this physical exhaustion or even subpar performance meant that Mars could no longer be or should no longer be a shareholder or director of the band's corporate entities or a member of the band's LLCs. The other members agreed to reconsider their prior take it or leave it offer, but nevertheless voted to oust Mars from the corporations as a director and officer and to purchase his shares for book value. Ooh. Which they claim was essentially no value. However, they agreed to postpone their decision for 2 weeks pending more discussions between the parties. So book value means they're just like whatever the shares are worth on the books, they're not going to take into account like actually what the name Mötley Crüe is worth on shirts and books and movies and anything else. It is literally a go away. Post shareholders meeting communication. When the 2 weeks came and went, MCI's attorneys advised Mars's attorneys that they needed more time to come up with a counter offer to Mars's offer. However, when MCI's attorneys finally sent over a red line draft agreement, one that was compared to their own original offer, it was more red than black. Although they offered to raise Mars' share of the profits from the Live Nation tour from 5 to 7.5%, even though the cost of Mars's replacement guitarist on the road was a fraction of the 17.5% that they were trying to take away from Mars, they also changed other parts of the agreement so that it was impossible to determine whether the apparent increase of 2.5% was really an increase at all. In addition, instead of requiring Mars to divest his interest simply in MCI and RCW, as the original draft agreement had required, the new agreement required him to divest complete interest in the first two companies and now the 5 additional companies. As a result, Mars felt it was absolutely necessary to gather all of the corporate documents associated with these companies and to have a transactional corporate attorney review the documents. That makes sense. He's like, send it to Daryl. I'm never going to stop saying that. I need send it to Emily shirts as an homage to VPR. However, on January 12th, 2023, the band's attorney emailed Mars's attorney purporting to follow up on the previous emails. Mars's attorney responded on January 13th that he had advised the band's attorney that Mars wanted to have a corporate attorney look at the situation, which, because of the holidays, was impossible to accomplish until recently. However, on January 13th, the band's attorney responded as follows. Ooh. Hold on.
Mick resigned and left the band. He had exposure under the Live Nation deal, but the band got him out of his obligations. Per our correspondence and the corporate documents, Mick is entitled to nothing. Yet the band was gracious to give him a generous severance package. The discussion regarding Mick's severance has been going on since last summer. There was a board meeting in November to exercise the band's rights to buy out Mick's shares. Despite the decision to buy Mick out as a courtesy, the band agreed to an extension to finalize the severance and give Mick even better terms. You have had the draft of the agreement since last month and plenty of time to review. The band needs closure and to move on one way or another. No more delays. The deadline to finalize this deal is the close of business Friday, January 20th, or we proceed pursuant to the resolution reached at the board meeting. We reserve all rights.
Well, that got contentious quickly. No, this got contentious before that. On January 20, 2023, the unilaterally imposed deadline for responding, Mars's attorneys sent a detailed letter to the band's attorneys indicating that having a horrific debilitating disease could not possibly be construed as, quote, conduct constituting legal cause for termination in accordance with Section 1G6 of the shareholder agreement. Quote, stripped to its basis, if the band purports to terminate Mr. Mars as an officer, director, and or attempts to force the sale of his shares in MCI, it is doing so solely because of Mr. Mars's disability in a clear violation of California and federal law. There's the ADA. We were wondering when that would enter the chat. There is the ADA. Whoop, there it is. It's like, not only are we going to sue you, we're going to sue you and sue you and sue you. This could drag on forever. Right now, they're just asking for the books. But I wonder how much more they're going to ask for. In the letter, Mars's attorney also advised the band's attorney that the entire shareholder agreement was void and unenforceable, and that the band could not force Mars to sell his shares at all, meaning that he still would be entitled to 25% of the revenue of the band, less expenses, including the expense of hiring a new guitar player. Nevertheless, Mars's attorney indicated that Mars would still be willing to resolve the matter in the manner that Mars had originally suggested, i.e., he would receive 15% of the band's profits, but that because Mars owns 25% of the goodwill in the name of the band, he should be entitled to a percentage of the band's continuing touring profits. 18 days later, when Mars's attorney received no response to Mars's counteroffer, they sent separate requests to each of the corporations and LLCs requesting specific corporate and LLC documents. 7 days after the requests were sent, Mars's attorneys received an email from the band's attorney. What have we dealt with the conflict yet? Or no? Are we all just ignoring it? What about the conflict? The chat wants a book. We do need a book. We absolutely need a book. 7 days after the requests were sent, Mars's attorney received an email from the band's attorney, conflict not resolved, not responding to Mars's counteroffer, not responding to any of the aforementioned requests, but attaching a demand for arbitration that the other band members had filed against Mars, essentially suing him. Oh. The demand for arbitration. Is it attached? Essentially suing him to establish that Mars is no longer an officer, director, or shareholder of MCI. They clearly commenced an arbitration rather than a public lawsuit so that the public would not be aware of the deplorable manner in which they had treated their brother of 41 years. That's why this is a writ action. Interesting. I think what I need is a Rick Betteo sit down with McMars ASAP. Rick, there's room for Rick. Rick, can we have a conversation about bands? I need to text Rick after this. Did you see he was on like number 5 or 6 on trending? Like yesterday or today? No more books, Emily. Read Dirt or Vince Neil's book. Please, no more books. I'm ready for all the books. I want the tea on this. Request for documents. I'm not going to read through all of this. They requested documents from all of the corporations. They requested accountings. Under the law, they're entitled to all of those things. They requested them. They're citing the law that they're required to give them over. That's not controversial. And those things weren't given. And then that's the first cause of action. So that's where we're at the end. I said I wasn't going to go through every page, and we went through damn near every page. That's fucking fascinating. All right, let's do a quick summary, because man, oh man. So founding member of Mötley Crüe, McMars, is suing for a writ. So he is asking the court to force all of the corporate entities, of Mötley Crüe to turn over their books, as Mötley Crüe is trying to force McMars out of the band and to give up his rights and interests in the goodwill, in the name Mötley Crüe, in their music, in their touring revenue, in their merchandising revenue, in all of it. And they're purporting to force him out of the band, it seems, based on the fact that he has a chronic autoimmune disorder. So yeah, the ADA is going to come in here in a big way. And this is absolutely staggering. absolutely staggering stuff. We will see what happens. It seems like there is a lot of underlying things that are going to be dealt with in arbitration and that they filed a demand for arbitration. Those aren't public. So we're not going to see much more about the arbitration. I could try to get my hands on it. But because sometimes those things make their way into the media, this is a fascinating case. At the end of the day, they put everything they wanted the public to know in this demand for a writ. They have a right to get a writ. They need to get all of the corporate documents, especially if the corporation is trying to force a sale of shares. Yes, people can be forced out of corporations. Yes, it happens, but they're going to argue about whether this is a proper ground to force him out of this. I'm absolutely fascinated. Absolutely fascinated. Absolutely fascinated by this lawsuit, and I will be following it along. So that's why they put in the tea of what the other members of the band had done and never gotten kicked out of the band, saying, look, he's saying, I can't go on an international tour. And they're like, fuck it, you're out. Whereas others have, gone to jail and prison and what have you, and have not been yeeted from the band or had left for periods of time and then come back. And then they called their offer generous. This is going to be a very ugly breakup. And the amount of money on the line can't be insubstantial with the music catalog, goodwill, current touring, and intellectual property. That is a lot going on. I can't imagine how hard these kind of band breakups are, and we see them going on over and over and over again with bands breaking up and how ugly it gets. But this one feels real gross. So with all of that, how are you guys feeling about that? Let's get to questions. It's time. It's time to get to questions. I've got questions, you've got questions, we've got questions. That was a whole lot. Let's go. Let's go to questions. Don't worry, y'all. I'm not giving this one up. I know there's some topics that the broader audience is not as interested in, but that the law nerds are. This one seems that the law nerds are really, really in. And so I will absolutely keep an eye on it. This just seems to be a very big mess that's going to start to unfold. It's wild. It's just absolutely wild. So let's get to questions. Chat, it's so good to see you. It's got to be heartbreaking for everybody. Toya made the point that Death Row Records broke up cleaner. That's a real big statement. That's a real big statement. So I will wait to see the response on this. I will absolutely cover the response on this and see what they do. This was just filed April 6th. So we've got a little bit of time before we see a response, but it's really big allegations, but I wonder how the arbitration is going. I also want to know if there's an answer to the attorney conflict. Did everybody just go, we need answers. We need answers. But it's really sad stuff. And that's the hard thing with music is we see it so frequently, and it just every single time it's sad, especially when you love a band. I am still not over members of bands no longer being in bands that I love. It changes things, but also bands have to do what they need to do to stay healthy and maintain boundaries. But I think this was a reasonable boundary set by Mick Mars of, hey, these are the boundaries in which I can work. He asked for a reasonable accommodation. Hey, if you have to hire somebody else to go out on tour, fine. Reduce my income by the amount that you're paying somebody else to go out on tour. That's a reasonable accommodation. Reasonable. Cass, I talked about this a bit earlier. I don't know when this is from, but this is from Torrid. So, and the one from me, I don't remember what I wore yesterday. Probably Target. Allie said, hello, lovely people. I'm officially back from rehab. Congratulations, Allie. 81 days alcohol-free and 149 days Adderall-free. I'm so happy to be back with this amazing community. Allie, cheers. I'm sure the community is cheersing along with you. Congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. We're so proud of you. Flux said tech fund. I know. This is the Emily needs a producer on site to call and yell at the power company. Today was weird. Question, doesn't Emily, how long have we been streaming for? 2 hours and 20 minutes plus 20 minutes before, almost 3 hours, and my brain has stopped. Question, doesn't ambiguity in a contract generally fall in favor of the side that didn't write the contract? If yes, does that apply here? Cheryl, they had a limitation written into the contract with BBTV that said nothing shall, in the interpretation clause, nothing shall be construed against the party that wrote the contract. So that was written into the contract that does not apply. But I think that there's a lot of room in the language to argue that memberships go under the subscriptions. Brenda Lee said, question, I don't understand why H3 couldn't pay themselves. If he couldn't change his country, why couldn't he create his own management company for YouTube to send the cash to instead? Why was BBTV necessary, or the BB multi-channel network necessary? The ins and outs of that, I will let Ethan speak to on his own. When Ethan started his YouTube channel, this is an issue with AdSense accounts, and I don't understand all of the stuff with AdSense accounts, but he had an AdSense account that was started in Israel and couldn't change it. So it made it difficult when he moved his channel to the US and physically moved to the US. But the ins and outs of all of that and why you couldn't just handle it through another AdSense account, I don't know. He talked about it a bit in his videos, but the ins and outs of Google AdSense are challenging for me. I don't quite understand all of the ins and outs of AdSense. I've wanted to change like an email account on something, and I'm like, ugh, this is too much effort. So I understand this seems like a simpler solution. I have a work luncheon. I'll be back. Well, I'm glad you'll be back, Elena. Enjoy work luncheon. Contracts. The big print giveth, the small print taketh away. Elizabeth, facts. Taylor said Ethan is a good man and stands up for what's right. Ethan absolutely stands up for creators, and we've seen that time and time and time again. And we've seen really good relationships with Ethan and his crew, and blah blah blah. And I don't mean to say blah 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 in a diminishing way, and on and on and on. So can Ethan be a controversial figure? Yes. Absolutely. So, but that doesn't mean we don't cover people's legal stuff. Jen, it's good to see you. These agreements, man, something else. J. Michael said, if BBTV gives in, could other subscribers use that against them? I don't think so. Every contract is different. Every relationship is different, but I think there's probably conversations happening with other conversations happening with other creators, I imagine. So with all of that, Hannah Louise said Ethan also harassed the CEO of BBTV for no reason. You know how I feel about harassment. I don't like it. I think it's totally fine to say, hey, what's going on with this company? Why are they doing this? These are the facts. I think that's fine. There's room for, hey, what's going on with this? But directing harassment is never okay. I have not seen that, but I do not purport to see anything, and I don't see anything. Anne said AI generated content is already becoming an issue within the writing world. So far, you can't claim the copy for AI generated text is the consensus. And that'll be interesting too. Like how does copyright deal with stuff that isn't generated by a person? Is it who owns the AI? Is it who asks the question or does the query? I don't know. Kalo said meet and greet at BravoCon. Yes, just got roped into going, and Emily is literally the only person I'd be excited to see. Yes, I'm going. Yes, I will be going. So yes. Yes. Let's see. I'm going to keep going. Question, Emily, can you talk about how basic contract law errs on the side of the signer, not the drafter? I said I would come back round to it. We just kind of talked about it, that there was a clause in this one for the interpretation section saying there shouldn't be kind of a tie break, but this can go jurisdiction by jurisdiction. And you have to this is why lawyers need to read contracts, because each of those clauses have meaning. And in this one, they were not erring on the side of the signer, or they had asked for the interpretation to not err on the side of the signer. Amora said, how much does StreamYard take? Is that for super chats? StreamYard doesn't take anything from me. StreamYard is a software that I use. So they don't facilitate super chats. They allow me to show them and to show comments like this. They don't take anything from my channel. We have a revenue split if people sign up for StreamYard, and we have a sponsorship and brand ambassador relationship where they pay me as a user of their software. But I've used their software since my channel started doing this in 2020 because it is the easiest one out there and I love it. But no, they do not take a portion of my super chats, and my super chats don't run through them. It is the streaming software that I use. So Cher said, "Thank you, Emily. This last week has been hard as I recently lost my baby brother. I'm so sorry. At the age of 60, too young, too soon, and I desperately needed the distraction of my second love, law. Well, we are here to be your distraction. I am terribly sorry for the loss in your family. I cannot imagine. I also have a younger brother. I cannot imagine." Robbie said, "Question: When you are in negotiations with a company like this, can they ask you to sign an NDA about the contract even if you don't sign with them?" They can. And there are conversations I will only have under NDA depending on what I'm talking about. So yes, they can absolutely do that. Often they don't, but they can. B Vargas says, "Question: Is it the 600K for a month? Can he get reimbursed for prior time the accountant didn't catch?" He's going to have to, I would ask for all the records, and I'm sure he's going to. That 600K seemed to be for the time they had records for. That was my understanding of it. Eric said, "Do you think BBTV paid Ethan out in full as he requested because it represents 30% for the past year and not since memberships were added?" I would imagine that there will be some kind of an audit of records. I would. I will be interested to go catch up on his videos and see what he said about it. Jen said, "Question: If one party has to cover the cost of arbitration in a case, do they get to choose the arbitrator? Seems like that might not be bad if so." Generally, it goes under the rules. That said, it goes by the rules of the whichever arbitration they had cited, and then the choice of arbitrator would go by those rules. But no, often the person who forces the arbitration clause pays for the arbitration, but they don't necessarily get to pick the arbitrator. That would go under the rules, to the best of my understanding. Does just listening on the podcast count, or do we have to download? I'm not sure. I will have to ask. I will have to ask about that. I'm not sure. If this goes to trial, can we ride with this one? Yes. But the problem is if the Mötley Crüe stuff, I mean, it's a writ. I don't really think it can go to trial. As the Mötley Crüe stuff progresses, we'll follow it, but it's also Los Angeles. And so there will be no audio, no video, no nothing until Los Angeles decides to open up its courts more because they're sick of people lining up on the sidewalk. But that's a whole different conversation. So, Chris said, "Oh, stop, Emily. No one appreciates their fans like you do. MC got me through my college years because I was a later fan. So invested in this case." I adore you guys. You guys are the best. I don't think anyone has a group community quite like I do. So, Danielle Clark said, "You said healthy boundaries is absolutely the best compliments I never knew I needed. Can we all just acknowledge how hard that can be?" Y'all are the best. Look, man, we're acknowledging the hard things in life, and setting healthy boundaries is one of those really, really hard things. And it's something I've seen a lot of questions about the current criminal cases going on, and will I cover them? I might cover the law around the defenses that are playing out. I might not. There's a lot of dark in those two cases going on right now, and I don't want to pull you guys into it, and there's a lot I don't want to cover in that. So I don't even know if I want to touch on the defenses because they're so fact specific. I know that Lawyer is doing some roundups of it. I don't know who else is doing roundups of it. Proceed with caution. There are things that you cannot unknow, and there are things that you cannot unsee. And so that is a boundary I have set as a creator. The Murdaugh case was heavy and hard. I am not ready to jump in to cases that dark, and I'm not going to. It is a boundary for me. Will I cover some of those defenses, they are very fact specific. I have not decided. If I do, I will let you know that I am going to cover what the legal of the defenses mean. But I know that Peter is doing that, and I also trust the way that Peter does his content. I know how conscientious he is in in not just protecting his audience, but also making sure that he is making it accessible and doing so in a very compassionate way. So I like the way that Peter creates his content, and know that if he's covering it, he's going to do so in a way that you can engage with. It is a lot. So no on Vallow, no on Staunch, yes on Koberger, and I have been covering it. I I worked as a criminal prosecutor for a long time. There's a lot that I have seen that I can't unsee, and if I can choose not to do that to you as a community, I'm going to. There is an Instagram account. Hold on. That this morning. Where is it? Let me see. Give me 1 second. There's an Instagram account that I absolutely love. Um, and this was what they posted today. Let me see. Ugh, why is it this pulling up? This is pulling up so slowly. I don't know. I don't think this is a private account. I think it's a public account, but it's called That DA Life. It is an account that talks a lot about what it's like to be a DA. And so That DA Life posted the meme that says, when your coworker forgets to pick up the crime scene photos they printed and you find them. That. Yep. That's how that feels. So I'm not doing that to all of y'all in these cases. When you go to the printer and you're like, fuck, that's not, damn it. I walked into a coworker's office once they were going through an autopsy of a very young child, and it was all the stuff was all over their desks. And I walked in, I was like, yeah, out, I'll come back. It's very, very hard. And so nope. So with all of that, there are boundaries. I set boundaries. Y'all set boundaries. If you want to engage in it, I'm not going to tell you yes or no, but I'm also not going to bring you in because I know a lot of you are like, Emily, I want to talk about what you're talking about. For me, there is so much trauma in these cases. It's A, not easy to cover. B, not entertaining in any way. And there are some things you maybe just don't need to know. So with all of that, I've talked about it a lot, but I just, yep. Lisa Ann, thank you. They absolutely covered that in the lawsuit, didn't they? So thank you. Lizzie said AS is horrendously painful and he's had it for years. It seems like most of his life from his late 20s. So I don't know why they are surprised at 71 he can no longer do world tours. I don't know. Question, what are the ADA implications here? Lots. There's lots of them. I saw the courts. Emily Rose Riley in the chat said, I think Peter's mindfulness comes from being a parent himself. And Peter has worked as a criminal defense attorney and as a criminal prosecutor. And so I know where his perspective is coming from, and I watch his content. I like his summaries. I know he's also really busy as a practicing attorney, but I'm very mindful of when I tell you guys, hey, this creator's covering it, then I know I know kind of what you're going to get, right? We try to be good stewards of our communities. I don't want to run you guys into things that are going to be hard, because you'll be like, Emily, why did you recommend me this thing? I try to only tell you things that I can recommend wholeheartedly. Also, Peter has great hair, Jolene. Yes, true. Also, if I send you guys to go watch The Lawyer You Know, then you will be present when he receives the books that we might need to be sending him. Question, couldn't he immediately sue them for wrongful termination? Peachy Smile, I think it's Smile. I think that they've alluded to the fact that that's going to be dealt with in arbitration, and the lawyers have definitely pulled out that the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, is a huge issue here, because I do think they are trying to terminate him based on his disability, and that is illegal. So I don't think they can terminate him based on his disability, which is why it seems like they were trying to say he played the wrong chords a few times. Are there any legal risks for how Ethan responded to BBTV? I have not watched all of Ethan's coverage. Whenever you talk about something that goes beyond opinion, there are always risks. And I think Ethan has found this in his coverage that there are times that he's been sued for defamation. Well, it's mostly the same people suing in multiple different ways, but it is always a consideration in how you talk about things. But I have not, there's always a risk of getting sued, but I have not watched things that I've been like, that's the thing. The thing that's concerning is when you say it's my opinion. That doesn't always fly because things like defamation by implication exist and other things. So saying it's my opinion that somebody XYZ, and this is not talking about Ethan, this is a much broader, like somebody XYZ, atrocity, thing, crime, whatever. The in my opinion isn't going to cure the thing that is said afterwards. So in my opinion is not always, going to cure it. Stating an actual opinion cures it. Ethan saying, I think BBTV is skimming off the top of my money because I'm seeing the numbers not match. Well, that's a belief based on a fact. I don't think that's a defamatory false statement. EDB, I know you, let's see. I know you'd love Judge Warner. He's amazing. I don't know which judge that is for which thing, but thank you. I know there is also a restitution hearing going on with Brooks. I don't know what, if any of that I will cover. I will take a look, but Brooks is a hard case too, man. And I don't know if there's going to be any there. I know they're going to do a restitution hearing. He will get sent to an amount of restitution. I will decide that for next week. Yes, I mean, it's like my opinion is not a cure-all. Wait, is Hogue, Tanja said Hogue is on in 35 minutes. That's fantastic. So if Hogue is on in 35 minutes, I can definitely let you all know that he's on so you can pop over there. And that's what it is. I generally don't rate it can be overwhelming, but I can tell you all that he's on. And since he's on in 35 minutes and say, hey, Hogue is going to be live in 35 minutes. So you can go over there. So with all of that, the things I will ask you for today, very much. Thank you for helping the podcast. I mean, yesterday, I think we went from like 144 to 63, 64, something like that. Thank you all for downloading the audio of the podcast and listening to the Emily Show, not just here on YouTube, but on your favorite podcasting app. I very much appreciate it. Thank you for being members here. If you have any questions about what I use to stream, that's all linked down below. Thank you for bearing with me with the technical issues today due to power fuckery. Such nonsense. Such nonsense. And with all of that, I will be back on Tuesday. We had a great members only live yesterday. So if you are in the member spaces, those videos are in your member spaces for you to take a look at. What else? I will be around the interwebs a little. Members. Hi. I have an interview tomorrow that's going to be on next week's podcast. I'm going to come into the member spaces later today and ask if you have any questions for the person I am interviewing. So members, that will be in your member spaces. Z asked, are the Zoom calls available for replay? No, we do not put the Zoom calls up for replay. So I will be putting those up to see if you guys have any questions for the person I'm interviewing. And then we will have an attorney interview next week on the podcast. Tuesday, we will be continuing to catch up on all the things I have missed. Next week, I think I need to look at my schedule before I say 100% for sure, but I think maybe we'll do a food court Friday next week. I've been gathering some really fun things, and we need to do that. So with all of it, let us go. Let us go. It is time, law nerds. It is time. Thank you for being here. Cheers. I will see you around the interwebs a little this week, and I'm still kind of on a like recovering from trial. So, I will see you moderately around the interwebs. I need to go do a reel about the Idaho case from yesterday so that you guys can all go listen to the podcast. Thank you for being here. I will see you soon.
You can find all the Law Nerd goodies at lawnerdshop.com. Connect with me on social media at The Emily D. Baker. And don't forget to check out my podcasts, The Emily Show, and the new podcast, Quick Bits, summarizing everything I talk about on my Tuesday and Thursday live streams. You know, when you only have time for just the quick bits.